The human brain represents one of nature's most extraordinary achievements, a 3-pound universe of interconnected neurons that gives rise to consciousness, emotion, and behavior. Yet beneath this shared marvel lies a fascinating landscape of individual differences that have captivated scientists for generations. These differences aren't merely academic curiosities. They represent fundamental variations in how our brains are built, how they function, and how they respond to the world around us. When we peer into the intricate architecture of the human brain, we discover that no two brains are exactly alike. Like fingerprints or snowflakes, each brain carries its own unique signature of structural organization, chemical balance, and functional capacity. These neurobiological foundations shape everything from how we process information to how we experience emotions, from our response to stress to our capacity for learning and memory. The story of brain differences begins at the most basic level of neural architecture. Imagine the brain as a vast metropolis, with billions of neural citizens connected by an intricate network of highways and byways. In this neural city, the size and organization of different neighborhoods vary dramatically from person to person. Some brains are larger overall, while others are more compact, yet equally efficient. The distribution of gray matter, the brain's processing centers, differs significantly across individuals, creating unique patterns of cognitive strength and specialization. These structural variations aren't random accidents of development. They're the result of a complex interplay between genetic programming and environmental influences that begins in the earliest moments of life. During embryonic development, waves of cellular migration create the brain's fundamental architecture, but this process is subtly different for each individual. Some people develop brains with more pronounced asymmetries between the left and right hemispheres, while others show more balanced patterns of organization. The corpus callosum, that remarkable bridge of neural fibers connecting the brain's two hemispheres, varies dramatically in size and organization across individuals. This variation has profound implications for how information flows between the brain's left and right sides, influencing everything from creative problem-solving to analytical thinking. Some people possess a thick, robust corpus callosum that facilitates rapid interhemispheric communication, while others have a more modest connection that may lead to more specialized hemispheric processing. Regional brain volumes tell equally compelling stories of individual difference. The prefrontal cortex, our brain's executive center, varies substantially in size and organization. Those with larger prefrontal regions often excel at planning, decision-making, and impulse control, while variations in temporal lobe volume can influence memory formation and emotional processing. The hippocampus, crucial for forming new memories, shows remarkable individual differences that correlate with everything from spatial navigation abilities to susceptibility to stress-related disorders. White matter, the brain's information superhighway, also displays fascinating patterns of individual variation. The thickness and organization of myelin sheaths around neural axons determine how quickly and efficiently information travels through the brain. Some individuals possess highly myelinated white matter tracts that enable lightning-fast neural communication, while others have different patterns that may support more contemplative, deliberate processing styles. But structure is only part of the story. The brain's chemical landscape provides another layer of individual difference that profoundly shapes our neural destiny. Hormones, those powerful molecular messengers, sculpt brain development from the earliest stages of life, and continue to influence neural function throughout our lifespan. These hormonal influences create some of the most dramatic and consequential differences in brain organization and function. Testosterone emerges as one of the most influential hormonal architects of brain development. This powerful hormone doesn't simply affect reproductive organs. It fundamentally rewires neural circuits, influences the growth of specific brain regions, and shapes the development of neural pathways that will influence behavior for a lifetime. During critical periods of development, testosterone exposure can lead to enhanced development of brain regions associated with spatial processing, while potentially reducing connectivity in areas linked to verbal communication and social cognition. The timing of testosterone exposure proves crucial to its effects. Prenatal exposure during specific developmental windows can permanently alter brain organization, creating lasting differences in neural architecture. These early hormonal influences help explain why we see consistent patterns of cognitive differences across populations, from enhanced spatial abilities in some individuals to superior verbal processing in others. Prenatal hormone exposure creates a fascinating natural experiment in brain development. The womb becomes a chemical environment where varying levels of hormones bathe the developing brain, creating unique patterns of neural organization. High levels of prenatal testosterone may enhance the development of brain regions associated with systematizing and analytical thinking, while lower levels might promote the growth of areas linked to empathy and social cognition. These prenatal influences don't operate in isolation. They interact with genetic factors to create complex patterns of brain development. Some individuals possess genetic variants that make them more sensitive to hormonal influences, while others show greater resistance to these chemical messengers. This creates a rich tapestry of individual differences where genetic predisposition and hormonal environment combine to shape neural destiny. Puberty represents another critical period where hormones dramatically reshape the brain. The adolescent brain undergoes massive reorganization as sex hormones surge to adult levels. This hormonal flood doesn't simply trigger physical changes. It fundamentally rewires neural circuits, particularly in regions associated with emotion, reward processing, and social behavior. The timing and intensity of pubertal hormonal changes create lasting differences in brain organization that influence personality, cognitive abilities, and emotional regulation throughout life. The pubertal brain shows remarkable plasticity, with hormones acting as sculptors that prune unnecessary neural connections while strengthening others. This process creates more efficient neural networks, but the specific patterns of reorganization vary dramatically across individuals. Some adolescents experience smooth, gradual changes that preserve cognitive stability, while others undergo more dramatic neural restructuring that may temporarily disrupt certain abilities while enhancing others. Even in adulthood, hormonal fluctuations continue to influence brain function in profound ways. Monthly hormonal cycles create regular variations in cognitive performance, emotional regulation, and neural activity. These fluctuations aren't simply minor inconveniences. They represent meaningful changes in brain chemistry that can enhance certain abilities while temporarily reducing others. Understanding these patterns helps explain the rhythmic nature of cognitive performance and emotional experience. Stress hormones like cortisol add another layer of complexity to the brain's chemical landscape. Chronic stress exposure can literally reshape brain structure, shrinking regions associated with memory and executive function, while enlarging areas linked to fear and anxiety. These stress-induced changes create lasting individual differences in brain organization that influence everything from learning capacity to emotional resilience. The brain's neurotransmitter systems provide yet another dimension of individual variation that profoundly shapes neural function. These chemical messengers, the brain's own pharmacy of mood-altering compounds, show remarkable individual differences in production, distribution, and sensitivity. Each person possesses a unique neurochemical fingerprint that influences everything from attention and motivation to mood and social behavior. Dopamine, the brain's reward and motivation chemical, varies dramatically across individuals in both its production and the sensitivity of its receptors. Some people possess highly active dopamine systems that drive intense motivation and reward-seeking behavior, while others have more modest dopamine activity that may support more contemplative, less impulsive approaches to life. These differences in dopamine function help explain why some individuals are naturally driven achievers, while others find satisfaction in quieter pursuits. The dopamine system's influence extends far beyond simple reward processing. It plays crucial roles in attention, working memory, and executive function. Individuals with optimal dopamine levels often excel at tasks requiring sustained attention and cognitive flexibility, while those with either too much or too little dopamine may struggle with different aspects of cognitive control. The prefrontal cortex, heavily dependent on dopamine, shows particularly dramatic functional differences based on individual variations in dopamine activity. Dopamine pathways also influence personality traits and behavioral tendencies. People with highly active dopamine systems often display greater novelty-seeking, risk-taking, and exploratory behavior. They're drawn to new experiences and challenges, driven by their brain's enhanced sensitivity to potential rewards. Conversely, individuals with more modest dopamine activity may prefer familiar environments and established routines, finding satisfaction in stability rather than novelty. Serotonin, the brain's mood stabilizer, presents another fascinating dimension of neurochemical individuality. This neurotransmitter doesn't simply influence happiness. It shapes emotional regulation, social behavior, and even cognitive processing styles. People with robust serotonin systems often display greater emotional stability, enhanced social cooperation, and improved ability to delay gratification. They tend to be more optimistic, resilient in the face of setbacks, and skilled at maintaining emotional balance. Individual differences in serotonin function can be traced to variations in the genes that control serotonin production, transport, and receptor sensitivity. Some people inherit genetic variants that produce highly efficient serotonin systems, while others have versions that create vulnerability to mood disorders and emotional instability. These genetic differences interact with environmental factors to create the full spectrum of serotonin-related individual differences we observe. The serotonin system's influence on social behavior proves particularly intriguing. Higher serotonin activity correlates with enhanced empathy, cooperation, and prosocial behavior. People with robust serotonin function often excel at reading social cues, managing interpersonal relationships, and maintaining group harmony. They're naturally inclined toward helping others and working collaboratively toward shared goals. Serotonin also influences cognitive processing styles in subtle but important ways. Higher serotonin levels tend to promote more flexible, creative thinking, while lower levels may enhance focused attention and analytical processing. This creates an interesting trade-off where optimal serotonin levels support emotional well-being and social function, but may slightly reduce certain types of cognitive performance. GABA, the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, provides another crucial dimension of neurochemical individuality. This calming chemical helps regulate neural excitation, preventing the brain from becoming overwhelmed by excessive activity. People with efficient GABA systems tend to remain calm under pressure, handle stress effectively, and maintain emotional equilibrium even in challenging situations. Individual differences in GABA function profoundly influence stress responses and anxiety levels. Those with robust GABA activity often display remarkable resilience in the face of adversity, maintaining clear thinking and emotional stability even during crises. Their brains possess natural buffers against excessive stress activation, allowing them to function effectively under pressure. The GABA system's role in sleep regulation adds another layer to its influence on individual differences. People with optimal GABA function typically enjoy deeper, more restorative sleep, which supports better cognitive performance, emotional regulation, and physical health. Poor GABA function, conversely, can lead to sleep difficulties that cascade into broader problems with mood, attention, and stress management. GABA also influences learning and memory formation in important ways. While excessive GABA activity can impair learning by reducing neural plasticity, optimal levels support the consolidation of new memories while preventing interference from competing information. This creates individual differences in learning styles, with some people excelling at focused, concentrated learning, while others perform better with distributed practice. Acetylcholine, the brain's attention chemical, rounds out our exploration of neurotransmitter differences. This crucial neurotransmitter helps focus attention, enhance sensory processing, and support learning and memory formation. People with highly active acetylcholine systems often display exceptional attention to detail, enhanced perceptual sensitivity, and superior ability to filter relevant information from distracting noise. The acetylcholine system shows fascinating individual variations that influence cognitive processing styles. Some people possess highly sensitive acetylcholine systems that make them acutely aware of environmental details and subtle changes in their surroundings. These individuals often excel at tasks requiring careful observation, pattern recognition, and attention to subtle cues that others might miss. Acetylcholine's role in learning and memory creates additional dimensions of individual difference. Higher acetylcholine activity enhances the encoding of new information, making it easier to form lasting memories of important experiences. This neurotransmitter also supports cognitive flexibility, helping people adapt their thinking when circumstances change or new information becomes available. The interaction between acetylcholine and other neurotransmitter systems creates complex patterns of cognitive strength and vulnerability. When acetylcholine works in harmony with dopamine, it can produce exceptional focus and learning ability. When combined with optimal serotonin levels, it supports both detailed attention and creative insight. These neurochemical interactions help explain why cognitive abilities cluster in different ways across individuals. Individual differences in neurotransmitter sensitivity add another layer of complexity to this neurochemical landscape. Some people possess highly sensitive receptor systems that respond strongly to even modest levels of neurotransmitter activity, while others require higher concentrations to achieve the same effects. These sensitivity differences can dramatically influence how individuals respond to medications, dietary changes, and environmental interventions designed to modify brain chemistry. The dynamic nature of neurotransmitter systems means that individual differences aren't fixed or unchanging. Neuroplasticity allows these systems to adapt and reorganize throughout life in response to experience, learning, and environmental demands. Understanding these adaptive capabilities opens possibilities for interventions that can help optimize brain function for each individual's unique neurobiological profile. The interplay between structural brain differences and neurochemical variations creates an incredibly rich landscape of individual differences in neural function. A person with a larger prefrontal cortex might excel at executive tasks if they also possess optimal dopamine function, but the same structural advantage might be less pronounced if their neurochemical balance differs. Similarly, Someone with modest structural volumes might achieve exceptional performance through optimal neurotransmitter function and efficient neural organization. These neurobiological foundations don't operate in isolation from experience and environment. Throughout life, our experiences literally reshape our brains, modifying both structure and chemistry in response to the demands we face. Learning new skills can increase regional brain volumes, while chronic stress can alter neurotransmitter sensitivity. This dynamic interplay between biology and experience means that our neurobiological foundations serve as starting points rather than fixed destinies. The implications of understanding these neurobiological foundations extend far beyond academic curiosity. In education, recognizing individual differences in brain organization can help tailor learning approaches to match each student's neurological strengths. In healthcare, understanding neurochemical variations can guide more personalized treatment approaches for mental health conditions. In the workplace, appreciation for cognitive differences can lead to better job matching and more effective team composition. As we continue to unravel the mysteries of the brain, we're discovering that the diversity of human neurobiological foundations represents one of our species' greatest strengths. Rather than viewing brain differences as problems to be solved, we're learning to appreciate them as variations that contribute to the rich tapestry of human capability and experience. The future of neuroscience lies not in reducing everyone to a single optimal brain pattern, but in understanding how to help each individual maximize their unique neurobiological potential. By appreciating the remarkable diversity of brain structure, hormonal influences, and neurotransmitter function, we open the door to a more personalized and effective approach to optimizing human neural function. This journey through the neurobiological foundations of brain differences reveals a profound truth. The human brain's greatest achievement isn't its similarity across individuals, but its remarkable capacity for beneficial variation. Each brain represents a unique solution to the challenges of processing information, regulating emotion, and navigating the complex social world we inhabit. Understanding and celebrating these differences isn't just good science. It's essential for creating a world that allows every individual to flourish according to their own neurobiological strengths. Cognitive processing patterns, the mind's unique fingerprint. The human mind operates like a sophisticated orchestra, with different cognitive instruments playing in harmony to create the symphony of thought. Yet just as no two orchestras sound exactly alike, each human brain processes information through its own distinctive patterns of cognitive operation. These processing patterns represent the fundamental ways our minds organize, manipulate, and understand the world around us, creating a rich tapestry of individual differences that shape everything from how we solve problems to how we communicate with others. Understanding cognitive processing patterns requires us to peer into the intricate machinery of the mind, examining how different people approach the same mental tasks through remarkably different neural pathways. Some minds excel at rotating three-dimensional objects in their imagination, effortlessly visualizing complex spatial relationships that would challenge others. Other minds demonstrate extraordinary facility with language, weaving words together with eloquence and precision that seems almost magical to those who struggle with verbal expression. These cognitive differences aren't merely academic curiosities. They represent fundamental variations in how human brains are wired to process different types of information. When we examine spatial abilities, we discover that some individuals possess minds that seem naturally tuned to understand the three-dimensional world with remarkable precision and clarity. These spatial thinkers can mentally rotate complex objects, visualize architectural structures from blueprints, and navigate through unfamiliar environments with an almost supernatural sense of direction. The ability to manipulate three-dimensional objects in the mind represents one of the most fascinating aspects of human cognition. Mental rotation tasks reveal dramatic individual differences in how people process spatial information. Some individuals can effortlessly rotate complex geometric shapes in their imagination, viewing them from multiple angles and predicting how they would appear from different perspectives. This spatial visualization ability extends far beyond simple geometric exercises. It underlies success in fields ranging from engineering and architecture to surgery and artistic creation. The neural mechanisms supporting spatial visualization involve complex interactions between multiple brain regions, particularly areas in the parietal cortex that specialize in spatial processing. Individuals with enhanced spatial abilities often show greater activation in these regions, along with more efficient communication between brain areas responsible for visual processing and motor control. This enhanced neural efficiency allows them to rapidly and accurately manipulate spatial information, giving them significant advantages in tasks requiring three-dimensional thinking. Mental rotation abilities show remarkable stability across the lifespan, suggesting they reflect fundamental differences in brain organization rather than simply learned skills. Children who excel at spatial tasks often maintain these advantages into adulthood, while those who struggle with spatial processing typically continue to find three-dimensional visualization challenging throughout their lives. This stability suggests that spatial abilities reflect deep-seated differences in neural architecture that emerge early in development and remain relatively constant over time. The practical implications of spatial visualization abilities extend into numerous real-world domains. Individuals with strong spatial skills often gravitate toward careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, where the ability to visualize complex three-dimensional relationships provides significant advantages. They excel at reading technical drawings, designing mechanical systems, and understanding how complex structures fit together in space. Navigation and wayfinding represent another fascinating dimension of spatial cognition that reveals dramatic individual differences. Some people possess an almost uncanny ability to navigate through complex environments, maintaining perfect orientation even in unfamiliar territories. They can retrace their steps through complicated routes, estimate distances with remarkable accuracy, and build detailed mental maps of their surroundings with minimal effort. These navigation experts often employ distinctive cognitive strategies that set them apart from those who struggle with spatial orientation. They tend to focus on geometric relationships between landmarks, building cognitive maps based on angles, distances, and spatial configurations. Their brains show enhanced activity in the hippocampus and associated regions responsible for spatial memory, allowing them to encode and retrieve spatial information with exceptional efficiency. The strategies people use for navigation reveal fascinating individual differences in spatial processing. Some navigators rely primarily on landmark-based strategies, remembering distinctive features along their route and using these as navigational anchors. Others employ survey-based strategies, building bird's-eye mental maps that allow them to understand spatial relationships from multiple perspectives. Still others use route-based strategies, memorizing sequences of turns and movements without necessarily understanding the overall spatial layout. These different navigational strategies reflect underlying differences in how brains process and organize spatial information. Landmark-based navigators often show enhanced activity in brain regions associated with object recognition and visual memory, while survey-based navigators display greater activation in areas responsible for spatial integration and mental mapping. Route-based navigators typically rely more heavily on procedural memory systems that specialize in learning sequences of actions. Spatial working memory represents another crucial component of spatial cognition, that shows remarkable individual variation. This cognitive system allows us to temporarily hold and manipulate spatial information in our minds, supporting everything from following directions to solving geometry problems. Some individuals possess exceptional spatial working memory capacity, allowing them to juggle multiple pieces of spatial information simultaneously without losing track of important details. The efficiency of spatial working memory influences performance across numerous cognitive domains. Individuals with robust spatial working memory often excel at tasks requiring them to keep track of multiple moving objects, remember complex spatial arrangements, or mentally manipulate geometric relationships. This capacity supports success in fields ranging from air traffic control and surgical planning to video game performance and athletic coordination. Individual differences in spatial working memory appear to reflect variations in the efficiency of neural networks connecting prefrontal regions responsible for executive control, with posterior areas specialized for spatial processing. People with more efficient connectivity between these regions can maintain more spatial information in their working memory, while simultaneously performing mental operations on that information. The relationship between spatial ability and mathematical thinking helps explain why spatial training can improve mathematical performance. When students learn to visualize mathematical concepts spatially, they often develop deeper understanding and better problem-solving abilities. This spatial approach to mathematics can be particularly beneficial for individuals whose minds are naturally tuned to process information through spatial channels. However, mathematical reasoning involves more than just spatial processing. It also requires logical thinking, pattern recognition, and abstract reasoning abilities that extend beyond purely spatial domains. Some individuals excel at mathematical thinking through non-spatial pathways, relying more heavily on symbolic manipulation, logical reasoning, or verbal processing. These different approaches to mathematical thinking reflect the remarkable diversity of cognitive processing patterns that humans employ. Language processing represents a fascinating counterpoint to spatial cognition, revealing equally dramatic individual differences in how people handle verbal information. While some minds excel at spatial visualization, others demonstrate extraordinary facility with words, grammar, and linguistic expression. These language-oriented minds can effortlessly generate fluent speech, craft elegant written prose, and navigate the subtle nuances of verbal communication with remarkable skill. The neural organization supporting language processing shows fascinating patterns of individual difference, particularly in terms of lateralization, the degree to which language functions are concentrated in one brain hemisphere versus distributed across both sides. Most people show strong left hemisphere dominance for language, with key language areas like Broca's and Wernicke's regions primarily located in the left side of the brain. However, significant individual differences exist in the degree of this lateralization and the specific organization of language networks. Some individuals display highly lateralized language processing, with strong left hemisphere dominance that supports rapid, efficient verbal processing. These people often excel at tasks requiring quick word retrieval, fluent speech production, and complex grammatical processing. Their brains show clear hemispheric specialization that allows for streamlined language processing with minimal interference between different cognitive systems. Others show more bilateral language organization, with language functions distributed across both brain hemispheres. This pattern can sometimes support enhanced creative language use and more flexible verbal processing, as it allows for greater integration between language systems and other cognitive abilities. However, bilateral organization can sometimes lead to slower processing speeds for certain types of verbal tasks. Verbal fluency represents one of the most obvious manifestations of individual differences in language processing. Some people can effortlessly generate streams of words, crafting complex sentences with sophisticated vocabulary and intricate grammatical structures. They seem to have unlimited access to their mental lexicon, pulling out precisely the right words to express even subtle and complex ideas. These verbal fluency differences reflect variations in how brains organize and access stored language information. Individuals with exceptional verbal fluency often show enhanced connectivity between brain regions responsible for word storage, grammatical processing, and speech production. Their neural networks can rapidly search through vast stores of linguistic information, selecting and combining words with remarkable speed and precision. The development of verbal fluency begins early in life and shows consistent individual differences that persist into adulthood. Children who are early talkers often maintain advantages in verbal processing throughout their lives, while those who develop language more slowly may continue to show relative weaknesses in verbal fluency. These early individual differences appear to reflect fundamental variations in how brains are organized to support language processing. Reading and writing development reveal additional dimensions of individual difference in language processing. Some children seem to acquire reading skills effortlessly, rapidly mastering the complex process of converting written symbols into meaningful language. They develop strong phonological awareness, quickly learn to decode unfamiliar words, and build extensive reading vocabularies with minimal instruction. Others find reading and writing more challenging, requiring intensive instruction and practice to develop basic literacy skills. These differences often reflect variations in how brains process the visual and auditory components of written language. Some individuals have neural systems that efficiently connect visual word recognition with phonological processing, while others show less efficient connectivity between these crucial systems. The neural basis of reading involves complex interactions between brain regions responsible for visual processing, phonological analysis, and semantic understanding. Individual differences in reading ability often reflect variations in how efficiently these regions communicate with each other. Skilled readers typically show highly coordinated activity across reading-related brain networks, while struggling readers may display less efficient neural communication. Writing development involves additional cognitive complexities that create further individual differences. Effective writing requires not only language skills, but also fine motor control, working memory capacity, and executive planning abilities. Some individuals excel at translating their thoughts into written form, effortlessly organizing ideas, and expressing them through clear, coherent prose. Others find writing laborious and challenging, struggling to coordinate the multiple cognitive demands of written expression. Communication style preferences represent another fascinating aspect of language processing differences. Some people naturally gravitate toward direct, concise communication, preferring to convey information efficiently with minimal elaboration. Others favor more elaborate, expressive communication styles, using rich vocabulary, complex sentence structures, and detailed explanations to convey their meaning. These communication preferences often reflect underlying differences in how brains process and organize verbal information. Some individuals have neural systems optimized for rapid, efficient language processing, leading them to prefer streamlined communication. Others have language networks that excel at generating rich, detailed verbal expressions, leading them toward more elaborate communication styles. Cultural and social factors also influence communication preferences, but individual differences in brain organization provide the foundation upon which these environmental influences operate. Understanding these neurobiological differences can help explain why some people naturally excel in certain communication contexts while struggling in others. The neural basis of attention involves complex networks connecting prefrontal regions responsible for cognitive control with sensory areas that process incoming information. Individual differences in attention often reflect variations in the efficiency of these attentional networks. Some people have highly efficient top-down control systems that can powerfully focus attention and suppress distractions, while others show different patterns of network organization that support more flexible, distributed attention. These attentional differences have profound implications for learning and performance across numerous domains. Students with strong, sustained attention often excel in traditional academic settings that require prolonged focus on specific subjects. However, students with more flexible attentional systems may perform better in interactive, multimodal learning environments that engage multiple cognitive systems simultaneously. Risk assessment and decision-making represent another crucial aspect of executive function that shows dramatic individual differences. Some people possess decision-making systems that carefully weigh potential outcomes, thoroughly analyze available options, and make calculated choices based on systematic evaluation of risks and benefits. They tend to be cautious decision-makers who prefer to gather extensive information before committing to a course of action. Others display more intuitive decision-making patterns, relying on rapid judgments based on limited information and emotional responses. These individuals often make quick decisions based on gut feelings or initial impressions, sometimes achieving excellent outcomes through rapid, intuitive processing that bypasses lengthy analytical deliberation. The neural mechanisms supporting decision-making involve interactions between prefrontal regions responsible for analytical thinking and limbic areas that process emotional information. Individual differences in decision-making style often reflect variations in how these systems are balanced and integrated. Some people show strong prefrontal control over emotional impulses, leading to more analytical decision-making, while others display greater integration between emotional and rational systems, supporting more intuitive choices. Neither decision-making style is inherently superior. Each has advantages in different contexts. Analytical decision-makers often excel in situations requiring careful risk assessment and systematic planning, such as financial planning or medical diagnosis. Intuitive decision-makers may perform better in fast-paced environments requiring rapid responses to changing conditions, such as emergency situations or creative problem-solving. Planning and goal-directed behavior reveal additional dimensions of executive function differences. Some individuals excel at long-term planning, setting distant goals and systematically working toward them over extended periods. They can break complex objectives into manageable steps, monitor their progress over time, and adjust their strategies as circumstances change. Their minds seem naturally organized to think in terms of future outcomes and strategic planning. Others display cognitive patterns better suited to short-term, flexible goal pursuit. They may excel at responding to immediate opportunities, adapting quickly to changing circumstances, and pursuing multiple goals simultaneously. While they may struggle with long-term planning, they often demonstrate remarkable ability to capitalize on unexpected opportunities and navigate unpredictable environments. The neural basis of planning involves prefrontal regions that specialize in temporal organization and goal representation. Individual differences in planning ability often reflect variations in how efficiently these regions can represent future states, maintain goal information over time, and coordinate complex sequences of actions. Some people have highly developed prefrontal systems that excel at temporal organization, while others show different patterns of organization that support more flexible, responsive behavior. Cognitive flexibility represents perhaps the most complex aspect of executive function, encompassing the ability to switch between different mental tasks, adapt thinking to new situations, and consider multiple perspectives simultaneously. Some individuals display remarkable cognitive flexibility, effortlessly shifting between different types of thinking and adapting their mental approach as circumstances change. This cognitive flexibility manifests in numerous ways, from the ability to consider multiple solutions to a problem, to the capacity to shift between different emotional perspectives, to the skill of adapting communication style to different audiences. Cognitively flexible individuals often excel in creative endeavors, complex problem-solving, and leadership roles that require adapting to diverse challenges and constituencies. Others show more focused, consistent cognitive patterns that may be less flexible, but provide advantages in terms of depth and expertise. These individuals may excel at developing deep knowledge in specific domains, maintaining consistent approaches to familiar problems, and providing stability in situations that require steady, reliable performance. The neural mechanisms supporting cognitive flexibility involve complex networks connecting prefrontal control regions with numerous other brain areas. Cognitive flexibility requires the ability to inhibit dominant responses, activate alternative processing strategies, and coordinate multiple cognitive systems simultaneously. Individual differences in flexibility often reflect variations in how efficiently these control networks can orchestrate complex cognitive operations. The interaction between different aspects of executive function creates complex patterns of cognitive strength and challenge that vary dramatically across individuals. Someone with exceptional attention control might struggle with cognitive flexibility, while another person with outstanding planning abilities might find risk assessment challenging. These patterns of executive function create unique cognitive profiles that influence success in different academic, professional, and personal contexts. Understanding these cognitive processing patterns has profound implications for education, career guidance, and personal development. Rather than viewing cognitive differences as deficits to be remediated, we can learn to appreciate them as variations that contribute to human diversity and capability. By recognizing and nurturing different types of cognitive strengths, we can create environments that allow all individuals to flourish according to their unique cognitive profiles. The future of cognitive science lies not in identifying the single best way to process information, but in understanding how different cognitive patterns can be optimized and applied effectively in different contexts. Each pattern of cognitive processing represents a valid and valuable approach to understanding and interacting with the world, contributing to the rich tapestry of human cognitive diversity that has enabled our species to thrive in countless different environments and challenges. Emotional and social psychology, the heart of human connection. The human experience is fundamentally social and emotional, woven together by invisible threads of feeling, understanding, and connection that bind us to one another in countless ways. Our emotional lives and social relationships represent perhaps the most profound aspects of what makes us uniquely human, yet they also reveal some of the most striking individual differences in how we navigate the complex landscape of human interaction. When we examine the intricate world of emotions and social behavior, we discover that each person possesses their own distinctive emotional fingerprint, a unique pattern of feeling, expressing, and regulating emotions that shapes every aspect of their lives. These individual differences aren't simply preferences or learned behaviors. They reflect deep-seated variations in how our brains process emotional information, respond to social cues, and form meaningful connections with others. The way we regulate our emotions represents one of the most fundamental aspects of psychological functioning. influencing everything from our daily mood to our long-term mental health and relationship success. Some individuals possess emotional regulation systems that maintain remarkable stability and balance, allowing them to navigate life's ups and downs with grace and resilience. They can experience intense emotions without being overwhelmed, process difficult feelings constructively, and maintain emotional equilibrium even during challenging circumstances. These emotionally regulated individuals often display distinctive patterns of brain activity that reflect their enhanced ability to manage emotional experiences. Their prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive center, shows strong connectivity with limbic regions responsible for emotional processing, creating efficient networks for emotional control and regulation. When faced with emotionally challenging situations, they can quickly activate cognitive strategies that help them maintain perspective, reframe negative experiences, and channel their emotional energy constructively. The development of effective emotion regulation begins early in life and reflects complex interactions between genetic predisposition, brain development, and environmental influences. Children who learn early to identify, understand, and manage their emotions often carry these advantages throughout their lives, building on their emotional foundation to develop increasingly sophisticated regulation strategies as they mature. However, not everyone develops the same level of emotional regulation capacity. Some individuals experience emotions with greater intensity and find it more challenging to manage strong feelings. Their emotional experiences may be more volatile, with higher peaks of joy and deeper valleys of distress. While this emotional intensity can sometimes feel overwhelming, it often comes with advantages: greater emotional depth, enhanced creativity, and more passionate engagement with life experiences. The expression of emotions reveals equally fascinating individual differences that profoundly influence how others perceive and respond to us. Some people are naturally expressive, wearing their hearts on their sleeves and sharing their emotional experiences openly with others. Their faces readily display their feelings, their voices carry emotional nuances, and their body language communicates their inner states clearly and authentically. These emotionally expressive individuals often excel in social situations that benefit from emotional transparency and authentic communication. They can build rapport quickly, inspire others through their emotional authenticity, and create deep connections based on shared emotional experiences. Their willingness to be emotionally vulnerable often encourages others to open up in return, creating cycles of emotional intimacy and connection. Others display more reserved emotional expression patterns, keeping their feelings more private and controlled. They may experience emotions just as intensely as their more expressive counterparts, but they choose to process these feelings internally rather than sharing them openly. This emotional reserve can provide advantages in situations requiring emotional stability, professional composure, or careful consideration of sensitive topics. The neural mechanisms underlying emotional expression involve complex interactions between brain regions responsible for emotional processing and those controlling facial expressions, vocal patterns, and body language. Individual differences in emotional expressiveness often reflect variations in how these systems are connected and regulated, with some people showing more direct pathways between emotional experience and expression, while others display more filtered, controlled connections. Cultural factors also play important roles in shaping emotional expression patterns, but individual neurobiological differences provide the foundation upon which cultural influences operate. Understanding these individual differences helps explain why some people naturally align with cultural norms for emotional expression, while others may struggle to conform to social expectations that conflict with their natural emotional patterns. Stress response mechanisms represent another crucial aspect of emotional functioning that shows remarkable individual variation. When faced with challenging or threatening situations, some people display stress responses characterized by focused attention, enhanced performance, and adaptive problem solving. Their stress systems activate efficiently, providing the energy and focus needed to address challenges effectively, then return to baseline once the stressor has passed. These adaptive stress responders often show distinctive patterns of physiological activation that optimize performance under pressure. Their autonomic nervous systems respond proportionally to stressors. Their stress hormone systems activate appropriately without becoming overwhelming, and their recovery mechanisms function efficiently to restore equilibrium once challenges have been addressed. Others experience stress in ways that may be more disruptive to optimal functioning. Their stress responses may be more intense, longer lasting, or less well-matched to the actual demands of the situation. They might experience stress in situations that others find manageable, or their stress systems might remain activated long after stressors have passed, creating ongoing physiological and psychological burden. The individual differences in stress responsivity reflect variations in multiple biological systems, including the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis that controls stress hormone release, the autonomic nervous system that manages physiological arousal, and brain circuits that evaluate threat and coordinate stress responses. Some people inherit genetic variants that create more sensitive stress systems, while others possess more resilient biological configurations. Coping strategy preferences reveal fascinating patterns of individual difference in how people manage life's challenges and difficulties. Some individuals gravitate toward problem-focused coping strategies, directly addressing stressors through active problem-solving, information gathering, and systematic action. When faced with difficulties, they analyze the situation, develop plans for addressing problems, and take concrete steps to improve their circumstances. These problem-focused copers often excel in situations where direct action can meaningfully impact outcomes. They tend to feel empowered by challenges, viewing difficulties as problems to be solved rather than threats to be endured. Their approach often leads to effective resolution of manageable stressors and builds confidence in their ability to handle future challenges. Others prefer emotion-focused coping strategies, concentrating on managing their emotional responses to stressors rather than trying to change the stressful situations themselves. They might use techniques like seeking social support, engaging in relaxation activities, reframing their perspective on difficult situations, or accepting circumstances they cannot control. Emotion-focused coping can be particularly effective when dealing with stressors that cannot be directly changed or controlled. These copers often develop sophisticated emotional regulation skills and may be better equipped to handle long-term, chronic stressors that require psychological adaptation rather than direct intervention. Many individuals use combinations of both problem-focused and emotion-focused coping, flexibly adapting their strategies to match the demands of different situations. However, people often show preferences for one approach over another, reflecting underlying differences in personality, cognitive style, and learned coping patterns developed through life experience. Emotional intelligence represents a fascinating constellation of abilities that encompasses emotional awareness, understanding, and management, both in oneself and others. Some individuals display remarkable emotional intelligence, effortlessly reading emotional cues, understanding the causes and consequences of different emotions, and skillfully managing emotional dynamics in social situations. These emotionally intelligent individuals often excel in roles requiring interpersonal sensitivity, emotional leadership, and complex social navigation. They can sense when others are struggling emotionally, provide appropriate support and comfort, and help groups manage emotional tensions constructively. Their ability to understand and work with emotions makes them natural counselors, leaders, and mediators. The development of emotional intelligence appears to involve both innate abilities and learned skills that develop through social experience and conscious effort. Some people seem naturally attuned to emotional information, while others develop emotional intelligence through deliberate practice and social learning. The neural basis of emotional intelligence involves integration between brain regions responsible for emotional processing, social cognition, and executive control. However, emotional intelligence itself shows interesting patterns of individual difference. Some people excel at understanding their own emotions, but struggle to read others accurately. Others may be highly sensitive to others' emotional states, but find it difficult to manage their own emotional responses. These patterns reflect the complex, multifaceted nature of emotional intelligence and the various ways it can manifest across individuals. Social cognition represents another fundamental aspect of human psychology that reveals profound individual differences in how we understand and interact with the social world. Our ability to comprehend the thoughts, feelings, and intentions of others forms the foundation of all meaningful social interaction. Yet people vary dramatically in their social cognitive abilities and approaches. Theory of mind: the ability to understand that others have thoughts, beliefs, and desires different from our own, represents one of the most crucial social cognitive abilities. Most people develop basic theory of mind capabilities during childhood, but significant individual differences exist in the sophistication and accuracy of these abilities throughout life. Some individuals possess exceptionally well-developed theory of mind abilities, allowing them to accurately infer others' mental states, predict behavior based on understanding of others' beliefs and desires, and navigate complex social situations with remarkable insight. They can step outside their own perspective and genuinely understand how situations appear from others' viewpoints, enabling them to communicate effectively, resolve conflicts constructively, and build strong relationships. These socially insightful individuals often show enhanced activity in brain regions associated with social cognition, including areas involved in perspective taking, mental state attribution, and social reasoning. Their neural networks for social understanding appear to be highly developed and efficiently integrated, allowing them to process social information rapidly and accurately. Individuals with secure attachment styles tend to be comfortable with intimacy and interdependence, trusting that others will be available and responsive when needed. They can communicate their needs directly, provide support to partners effectively, and maintain individual identity while building close connections. Their relationships tend to be characterized by mutual trust, effective communication, and emotional stability. Those with anxious attachment styles may crave close relationships, but worry about their partner's availability and commitment. They might be more sensitive to signs of rejection or abandonment, require more reassurance from partners, and experience more intense emotional reactions to relationship difficulties. While their deep emotional investment can create passionate connections, it can also lead to relationship anxiety and conflict. Individuals with avoidant attachment styles may value independence over intimacy, finding it difficult to rely on others or allow others to depend on them. They might be uncomfortable with emotional vulnerability and prefer to maintain emotional distance, even in close relationships. While their self-reliance can be a strength, it can also limit the depth of their emotional connections. Some people display disorganized attachment patterns that combine elements of anxiety and avoidance, leading to inconsistent relationship behaviors and difficulty maintaining stable emotional connections. These individuals might simultaneously crave and fear intimacy, creating complex relationship dynamics that can be challenging for both partners. Friendship formation patterns reveal additional dimensions of individual difference in social relationships. Some people form friendships easily, naturally attracting others through their warmth, humor, or shared interests. They may maintain large social networks with many acquaintances and close friends, enjoying the diversity and stimulation of multiple social connections. These socially gregarious individuals often excel at initiating social interactions, maintaining ongoing friendships across time and distance, and bringing people together in group settings. They may find energy and fulfillment in social interaction and feel most comfortable when surrounded by friends and social activity. Others may be more selective in their friendship formation, preferring fewer but deeper relationships. They might take longer to warm up to new people, but develop intensely loyal and intimate friendships with those they choose to include in their inner circle. Their friendships may be characterized by deep emotional connection, mutual understanding, and long-term stability. The preferences for broad versus deep social networks often reflect underlying differences in personality, social energy, and relationship values. Neither approach is inherently superior. Each offers different advantages and challenges, and both can lead to fulfilling social lives when aligned with individual temperament and preferences. Romantic relationship behaviors represent perhaps the most complex and emotionally significant arena of interpersonal relationships, where individual differences in emotional regulation, social cognition, and attachment patterns all converge to create unique relationship styles and experiences. Some individuals approach romantic relationships with openness, vulnerability, and emotional generosity, readily sharing their deepest thoughts and feelings with partners. They may be comfortable with interdependence, enjoy emotional intimacy, and find fulfillment in building shared lives with romantic partners. Their relationships may be characterized by emotional depth, mutual support, and collaborative decision-making. Others may approach romantic relationships more cautiously, maintaining greater independence and emotional boundaries. They might prefer relationships that allow for individual autonomy while still providing companionship and support. Their relationships may be characterized by mutual respect for independence, parallel rather than fully integrated lives, and complementary rather than merged identities. Communication patterns in relationships reveal additional layers of individual difference that significantly influence relationship satisfaction and stability. Some people are naturally direct communicators, expressing their thoughts and feelings clearly and expecting similar directness from partners. They may prefer to address conflicts head-on, discuss problems openly, and make decisions through explicit negotiation and compromise. These direct communicators often appreciate relationships where both partners can express themselves honestly without fear of judgment or retaliation. They may find indirect communication styles frustrating and prefer partners who share their preference for clear, straightforward interaction. Others may communicate more indirectly, relying on subtle cues, nonverbal communication, and implied understanding rather than explicit verbal expression. They might be skilled at reading between the lines, interpreting emotional nuances, and maintaining harmony through tactful communication approaches. Indirect communicators may prefer relationships with partners who share their sensitivity to subtle communication and their preference for maintaining emotional harmony over direct confrontation. They might find overly direct communication styles harsh or insensitive, preferring gentler approaches to difficult conversations. The interaction between different communication styles can create both challenges and opportunities in relationships. Partners with complementary communication styles may balance each other effectively, with direct communicators providing clarity and indirect communicators providing emotional sensitivity. However, mismatched communication styles can also lead to misunderstandings, frustration, and conflict if partners don't understand and appreciate each other's communication preferences. Understanding these individual differences in emotional and social psychology provides crucial insights into human nature and relationship dynamics. Rather than viewing differences as problems to be solved, we can learn to appreciate them as variations that contribute to the rich diversity of human social experience. Each pattern of emotional regulation, social cognition, and relationship behavior represents a valid approach to navigating the complex world of human interaction. The future of emotional and social psychology lies not in identifying the single best way to handle emotions and relationships, but in understanding how different patterns can be optimized and integrated to create fulfilling social lives. By recognizing and respecting individual differences in emotional and social functioning, we can build more inclusive communities, more effective relationships, and more supportive environments that allow all individuals to thrive according to their unique emotional and social profiles. Developmental psychology, the unfolding journey of human growth. Human development represents one of the most remarkable phenomena in the natural world. The transformation of a single fertilized cell into a complex, thinking, feeling individual capable of love, creativity, and profound understanding. This developmental journey unfolds across an entire lifetime, revealing fascinating patterns of growth, change, and adaptation that make each person's life story unique while sharing common threads that bind us together as a species. The miracle of human development begins in the earliest moments of life, long before we draw our first breath or open our eyes to the world. Within the protective environment of the womb, an extraordinary process of brain development unfolds that will shape the foundation of who we become. This prenatal period represents perhaps the most critical phase of neural development, when the basic architecture of the mind is established through intricate processes of cellular division, migration, and connection formation. During these crucial prenatal months, billions of neurons are born and begin their journey to their destined locations throughout the developing brain. This process of neuronal migration is nothing short of miraculous. Cells must navigate vast distances in the developing nervous system, following chemical signals and molecular guideposts to reach their proper destinations. Along the way, they begin forming the connections that will support a lifetime of thinking, feeling, and experiencing the world. The timing and patterns of prenatal brain development reveal fascinating individual differences that begin to emerge even before birth. Some developing brains show accelerated growth in certain regions, while others display different patterns of neural organization. These early variations, influenced by complex interactions between genetic programming and the intrauterine environment, begin to establish the neurobiological foundations that will influence personality, cognitive abilities, and behavioral tendencies throughout life. Hormonal influences during prenatal development play particularly crucial roles in shaping brain organization. The presence or absence of certain hormones during critical developmental windows can permanently alter the structure and function of neural circuits, creating lasting differences in how individuals process information, regulate emotions, and interact with the social world. These hormonal effects on brain development help explain some of the most fundamental individual differences we observe in human behavior and cognition. The prenatal environment itself creates additional sources of developmental variation. Factors such as maternal nutrition, stress levels, exposure to toxins, and overall health can influence fetal brain development in ways that have lifelong consequences. Some developing brains experience optimal conditions that support robust, healthy development, while others face challenges that may alter developmental trajectories in subtle but important ways. As development progresses and babies enter the world, the patterns established during prenatal development begin to manifest in observable behaviors and characteristics. The infancy and toddlerhood periods reveal remarkable individual differences in temperament, learning patterns, and social responsiveness. that provide early glimpses into the unique personalities that are emerging. Some infants display calm, easygoing temperaments that make them relatively simple to soothe and care for. They tend to have regular sleeping and eating patterns, adapt well to changes in routine, and show positive emotional responses to new experiences. These temperamental characteristics often persist into childhood and beyond, contributing to personalities characterized by emotional stability, adaptability, and positive social interactions. Other infants show more challenging temperamental patterns that require different caregiving approaches. They might be more sensitive to environmental stimulation, more difficult to soothe when distressed, or more irregular in their biological rhythms. While these temperamental characteristics can create challenges for caregivers, they often contribute to personalities that are passionate, intense, and highly responsive to environmental nuances. The development of attachment relationships during infancy represents one of the most crucial achievements of early development. The quality of these early emotional bonds influences relationship patterns throughout life, shaping how individuals approach intimacy, trust, and emotional connection. Some infants develop secure attachments characterized by trust in caregiver availability and comfort with emotional expression, while others may develop insecure patterns that reflect different early relationship experiences. These attachment patterns aren't simply learned behaviors. They involve complex neurobiological processes that shape brain development and emotional regulation systems. Secure attachment relationships support the development of neural circuits that promote emotional stability, social competence, and resilience in the face of stress. Less secure patterns may lead to different neural organizations that influence emotional reactivity, social anxiety, or difficulties with interpersonal relationships. Language development during infancy and toddlerhood reveals additional fascinating patterns of individual difference. Some children seem to acquire language effortlessly, rapidly building vocabulary and mastering grammatical structures with minimal formal instruction. They may begin speaking early, demonstrate rapid language growth, and show particular facility with verbal communication that continues throughout their lives. Others follow different developmental pathways, perhaps focusing more intensively on motor development or visual spatial skills before turning their attention to language acquisition. These children might be late talkers who eventually catch up to their peers, or they might show different patterns of language strength that emphasize understanding over expression or nonverbal communication over verbal fluency. The neural basis of language development involves complex processes of brain specialization and interhemispheric organization that vary significantly across individuals. Some children develop highly lateralized language systems with strong left hemisphere dominance, while others show more bilateral organization that may support different types of linguistic and cognitive abilities. Play behavior during early childhood provides another window into developing individual differences that reveal emerging personality patterns and cognitive preferences. Some children gravitate toward imaginative, fantasy-based play that involves elaborate storytelling, role-playing, and creative expression. They might spend hours engaged in make-believe scenarios, developing rich inner worlds and demonstrating early signs of creativity and narrative ability. Others prefer more structured, rule-based play activities that involve building, sorting, organizing, or problem-solving. They might be drawn to puzzles, construction toys, or games with clear objectives and systematic approaches to achievement. These play preferences often reflect emerging cognitive styles and may predict later interests in analytical, systematic thinking. Social play patterns also reveal important individual differences in developing social orientation and interpersonal preferences. Some children naturally gravitate toward group activities, cooperative play, and social interaction with peers. They enjoy sharing, taking turns, and engaging in collaborative activities that require coordination and communication with others. Others may prefer more solitary or parallel play activities, focusing intensively on individual projects or interests without necessarily seeking extensive social interaction. These children might develop deep expertise in particular areas of interest and may prefer one-on-one interactions over group activities. Gender identity formation represents another crucial aspect of early development that reveals complex patterns of individual difference. The process by which children develop understanding of gender categories, gender roles, and their own gender identity involves intricate interactions between biological predispositions, cognitive development, and social learning experiences. Some children show strong, early preferences for gender-typical activities, toys, and social interactions that align closely with cultural expectations for their assigned gender. They may gravitate naturally toward play activities and social behaviors that match societal gender norms and express clear identification with their gender category from an early age. Others display more flexible or non-conforming gender expression patterns, showing interests and behaviors that cross traditional gender boundaries or express ambivalence about conventional gender categories. These children might prefer mixed-gender playgroups, show interest in activities typically associated with other genders, or express uncertainty about gender identity that persists over time. The neurobiological basis of gender identity involves complex interactions between hormonal influences, brain development, and genetic factors that are still not fully understood. Recent research suggests that gender identity may be influenced by prenatal hormone exposure patterns that affect brain organization in ways that influence gender-related behaviors and identity formation. As children progress into adolescence, they encounter perhaps the most dramatic period of developmental change since infancy. The adolescent years bring profound transformations in brain structure, hormonal systems, social relationships, and identity formation that create both opportunities and challenges for healthy development. Puberty represents the biological trigger for many of these adolescent changes, initiating cascades of hormonal activity that transform both body and brain in fundamental ways. The timing of pubertal onset varies significantly across individuals, with some children beginning puberty as early as 8 or 9 years old, while others don't start until their mid-teens. These differences in pubertal timing can have profound psychological and social consequences that extend far beyond the biological changes themselves. Early maturing individuals often face unique challenges as they navigate adult-like physical changes while still possessing childlike cognitive and emotional capacities. They may be treated differently by peers and adults, face pressure to behave in more mature ways, and encounter social situations for which they are not psychologically prepared. However, early maturation can also provide advantages in terms of social status, athletic performance, and leadership opportunities. Late maturing individuals face different challenges as they watch their peers undergo physical changes while they remain physically childlike. They may feel self-conscious about their delayed development, struggle with social acceptance among more physically mature peers, and face challenges in romantic and social situations. However, late maturation can also provide advantages by allowing more time for cognitive and emotional development before facing adult-like social pressures. The brain undergoes massive reorganization during adolescence that rivals the dramatic changes of early infancy. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive functions like planning, decision-making, and impulse control, undergoes extensive remodeling that continues into the early 20s. This protracted development of executive control systems helps explain many of the behavioral characteristics associated with adolescence. During this period of brain reorganization, adolescents may show enhanced sensitivity to emotional and social stimuli while still developing the cognitive control systems needed to regulate their responses effectively. This creates a unique developmental window where emotional intensity and social motivation are high, while regulatory capacity is still maturing. The limbic system, particularly regions involved in reward processing and emotional reactivity, shows increased activity during adolescence that can contribute to heightened emotional experiences and increased sensitivity to peer approval and social rewards. This neurobiological pattern helps explain why adolescents may be particularly motivated by social acceptance, peer relationships, and novel experiences. Risk-taking behaviors during adolescence reflect these underlying changes in brain development and motivation systems. Many adolescents show increased willingness to engage in potentially dangerous activities, from reckless driving and substance experimentation to sexual activity and delinquent behavior. While these risk-taking tendencies can lead to negative outcomes, they also serve important developmental functions by promoting exploration, independence, and the acquisition of adult roles and responsibilities. The propensity for risk-taking shows significant individual differences that reflect variations in brain development, personality characteristics, and environmental influences. Some adolescents display relatively low levels of risk-taking behavior, preferring safe, conventional activities, and showing strong consideration for future consequences. Others engage in high levels of risk-taking that may reflect heightened sensation-seeking, peer influence, or difficulties with impulse control. Others may struggle more with aging-related changes, experiencing grief over lost capacities, anxiety about the future, or difficulty adapting to new limitations. However, even those who initially struggle with aging-related changes often develop effective adaptation strategies over time. The developmental journey, from conception to death, reveals the remarkable plasticity and resilience of human beings. Each individual's developmental path is unique, influenced by complex interactions between genetic predisposition, environmental influences, and personal choices. Understanding these developmental patterns helps us appreciate both the common humanity we share and the individual differences that make each person's life story unique. Rather than viewing development as a series of universal stages that everyone must navigate identically, we can appreciate it as a dynamic process that unfolds differently for each individual while maintaining common themes and challenges. This perspective encourages us to support diverse developmental pathways and to recognize that there are many different ways to live a fulfilling and meaningful life. The future of developmental psychology lies in understanding how to optimize development for each individual's unique characteristics and circumstances, recognizing that healthy development can take many different forms and that individual differences in developmental patterns represent human diversity rather than deviation from some ideal norm that retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4. Behavioral patterns and tendencies. Understanding human behavioral patterns reveals the intricate mechanisms that drive our actions, decisions, and interactions with the world around us. These patterns emerge from complex interactions between our biology, psychology, and environment, shaping how we respond to challenges, pursue goals, and navigate social relationships. Aggression and competition. Human aggression manifests in fascinating and diverse ways, far beyond simple physical confrontation. The distinction between physical and relational aggression represents one of the most significant discoveries in behavioral psychology. Physical aggression involves direct bodily harm or the threat of such harm, while relational aggression operates through social manipulation, exclusion, and psychological intimidation. Physical aggression typically peaks during early childhood and gradually decreases as individuals develop better emotional regulation and social skills. However, this doesn't mean aggression disappears entirely. Instead, it often transforms into more sophisticated forms. The neurobiological underpinnings of physical aggression involve the amygdala, which processes threat detection, and the prefrontal cortex, which governs impulse control. When these systems are imbalanced, aggressive responses become more likely. Relational aggression, on the other hand, requires advanced cognitive abilities and social understanding. This form of aggression involves deliberately harming others through social relationships. Examples include spreading rumors, social exclusion, manipulation of friendships, and public humiliation. Research shows that individuals who engage in relational aggression often possess high levels of social intelligence, using their understanding of social dynamics as a weapon. The evolutionary perspective on aggression suggests that these behaviors served adaptive functions throughout human history. Physical aggression helped our ancestors defend resources, territory, and mates. Relational aggression allowed individuals to navigate complex social hierarchies without risking physical harm. These ancient patterns continue to influence modern behavior, though they often manifest in ways that are less appropriate for contemporary society. Competitive drive mechanisms operate through several interconnected systems in the brain and body. The dopamine reward system plays a crucial role, providing pleasurable sensations when we achieve victories or make progress toward goals. This system evolved to motivate behaviors essential for survival, such as finding food, securing mates, and establishing social status. In modern contexts, these same mechanisms drive everything from academic achievement to professional success to recreational activities. Competition also involves the stress response system, which prepares the body for intense effort. The release of adrenaline and cortisol enhances focus, increases energy availability, and heightens sensory awareness. However, chronic activation of these systems can lead to burnout and health problems, highlighting the importance of balanced competitive engagement. Dominance behaviors represent another fundamental aspect of human social interaction. These behaviors establish and maintain hierarchical relationships within groups. Dominance can be expressed through physical posturing, vocal patterns, spatial positioning, and control of resources or information. Interestingly, effective dominance in human societies often relies more on social skills and competence than on physical intimidation. The development of dominance behaviors begins in early childhood and continues throughout life. Children learn to assert themselves, negotiate with peers, and understand their position within social groups. These early experiences significantly influence adult behavior patterns, including leadership styles, career choices, and relationship dynamics. Conflict resolution styles vary dramatically among individuals and are influenced by personality, cultural background, and learned experiences. Some people tend toward confrontational approaches, directly addressing disagreements and seeking immediate resolution. Others prefer avoidance, hoping that conflicts will resolve themselves over time. Collaborative styles involve working together to find mutually beneficial solutions, while competitive styles focus on winning at the expense of others. The effectiveness of different conflict resolution styles depends heavily on context. In some situations, direct confrontation is necessary and productive. In others, it may escalate tensions unnecessarily. Understanding when and how to employ different approaches is a crucial life skill that affects relationships, career success, and personal well-being. Risk-taking and sensation-seeking. The human propensity for risk-taking represents one of our species' most remarkable characteristics. This tendency has enabled extraordinary achievements throughout history, from exploration of new territories to scientific breakthroughs to artistic innovations. However, it also leads to destructive behaviors and poor decision-making. The neurobiological basis of risk preference involves complex interactions between multiple brain systems. The limbic system, particularly the striatum, responds strongly to potential rewards and novelty. This creates the pleasurable sensations associated with exciting or dangerous activities. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex evaluates potential consequences and attempts to moderate impulsive decisions. During adolescence and early adulthood, the reward-seeking systems develop more rapidly than the regulatory systems, creating a period of heightened risk-taking behavior. This developmental pattern explains why young people are more likely to engage in dangerous driving, experimentation with substances, and risky sexual behavior. The brain doesn't fully mature until the mid-20s, when the prefrontal cortex finally catches up with the limbic system. Individual differences in risk preference are partly determined by genetics. Studies of twins raised apart reveal significant heritability in sensation-seeking behaviors. Certain genetic variants affect neurotransmitter function, particularly dopamine processing, which influences how rewarding risky activities feel. However, genetics alone don't determine behavior. Environmental factors play equally important roles. Age-related changes in risk behavior follow predictable patterns throughout the lifespan. Children begin with natural caution, gradually becoming more adventurous as they develop confidence and independence. Risk-taking peaks during adolescence and early adulthood, then gradually decreases with age. Older adults typically become more risk-averse, prioritizing security and stability over novelty and excitement. Mental health considerations. Mental health represents one of the most crucial aspects of human well-being, yet it remains shrouded in complexity, misconception, and stigma. Understanding the diverse ways psychological challenges manifest across different individuals provides essential insights for recognition, treatment, and support. The landscape of mental health is not uniform. Rather, it varies dramatically based on biological factors, personal history, cultural background, and individual circumstances. Common psychological disorders. Depression stands as one of the most prevalent mental health conditions worldwide, affecting millions of people across all demographics. However, the presentation of depression varies significantly among individuals, creating challenges for both recognition and treatment. The traditional understanding of depression often focuses on sadness and withdrawal, but this narrow view misses many important manifestations of this complex condition. Classical depression symptoms include persistent sadness, loss of interest in previously enjoyable activities, changes in sleep patterns, appetite disturbances, fatigue, and feelings of worthlessness or guilt. However, depression can also manifest as irritability, anger, physical pain, cognitive difficulties, and behavioral changes that don't immediately suggest a mood disorder. Some individuals experience what clinicians call masked depression, where psychological symptoms are overshadowed by physical complaints. These people may visit medical doctors repeatedly for headaches, digestive issues, chronic pain, or fatigue without recognizing the underlying emotional distress. This presentation is particularly common among those who have difficulty identifying or expressing emotions, a condition known as alexithymia. Seasonal patterns also influence depression presentation. Seasonal affective disorder represents a specific form where symptoms emerge during darker months and improve with increased daylight. This pattern highlights the complex relationship between biology, environment, and mental health. The symptoms often include increased sleep, carbohydrate cravings, weight gain, and social withdrawal, differing somewhat from typical depression presentations. Age significantly affects how depression manifests. In children and adolescents, depression may appear as behavioral problems, academic difficulties, social withdrawal, or physical complaints rather than express sadness. Older adults may experience depression alongside medical conditions, making diagnosis more challenging. Their symptoms might include memory problems, confusion, or physical decline that could be mistakenly attributed to normal aging or medical illness. Cultural factors profoundly influence depression presentation and recognition. Some cultures emphasize physical symptoms over emotional distress, leading to presentations focused on bodily complaints. Others may view depression symptoms as character flaws or spiritual failings rather than medical conditions, affecting how individuals describe and seek help for their experiences. The neurobiological understanding of depression reveals complex interactions between neurotransmitter systems, brain structure, and genetic factors. Research has moved beyond simple chemical imbalance theories to recognize depression as involving multiple interconnected brain networks. The default mode network, which is active during rest and self-reflection, often shows altered patterns in depression. This finding helps explain why depressed individuals frequently experience rumination and negative self-focus. Anxiety disorders represent another major category of mental health conditions, encompassing a range of specific disorders with shared features of excessive worry, fear, and physiological arousal. However, anxiety manifests differently across individuals and specific disorder types, creating a complex landscape of presentations and experiences. Generalized anxiety disorder involves persistent, excessive worry about multiple life areas. Individuals with this condition often describe feeling constantly on edge, having difficulty controlling their worry, and experiencing physical symptoms like muscle tension, fatigue, and sleep disturbances. The worry is typically disproportionate to actual threats and interferes significantly with daily functioning. Panic disorder involves recurrent panic attacks, which are intense episodes of fear accompanied by physical symptoms such as rapid heartbeat, sweating, trembling, shortness of breath, and feelings of impending doom. The unpredictability of panic attacks often leads to anticipatory anxiety and avoidance behaviors that can severely restrict life activities. Social anxiety disorder centers on fear of social situations and potential embarrassment or judgment by others. This goes far beyond normal shyness, involving intense anxiety that significantly impairs social, academic, or occupational functioning. Physical symptoms may include blushing, trembling, sweating, and nausea in social contexts. Specific phobias involve intense, irrational fears of particular objects or situations. While the fear may seem unreasonable to others, it feels completely real and overwhelming to the individual experiencing it. Common phobias include heights, animals, medical procedures, and flying, but phobias can develop around virtually any stimulus. The manifestation of anxiety varies considerably based on individual factors. Some people experience primarily physical symptoms, while others struggle more with cognitive aspects like racing thoughts or catastrophic thinking patterns. Cultural background influences how anxiety is expressed and interpreted, with some cultures more accepting of anxiety symptoms, while others view them as signs of weakness or spiritual problems. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder represents a neurodevelopmental condition that affects attention, hyperactivity, and impulse control. ADHD presentations vary significantly across individuals and change throughout the lifespan, making recognition and diagnosis complex processes requiring careful evaluation. The inattentive presentation of ADHD involves difficulties with sustained attention, organization, following instructions, and completing tasks. Individuals may appear forgetful, easily distracted, and prone to losing important items. This presentation was historically called ADD and is often underrecognized, particularly in individuals who don't display hyperactive behaviors. The hyperactive impulsive presentation includes excessive fidgeting, difficulty sitting still, talking excessively, interrupting others, and acting without considering consequences. These behaviors are often more noticeable and disruptive, leading to earlier identification, but sometimes overshadowing attention difficulties. The combined presentation includes symptoms from both inattentive and hyperactive impulsive categories, representing the most common form of ADHD. However, symptom patterns can shift over time, with hyperactivity often decreasing with age, while attention difficulties persist. ADHD affects executive functioning, which includes planning, organization, time management, and working memory. These difficulties can significantly impact academic performance, work productivity, and relationship quality. However, individuals with ADHD also often display creativity, enthusiasm, and the ability to hyperfocus on interesting activities. The neurobiological basis of ADHD involves differences in brain development and neurotransmitter functioning, particularly dopamine and norepinephrine systems. Brain imaging studies reveal differences in the prefrontal cortex, which governs executive functions and reward processing systems. These findings help explain both the challenges and strengths associated with ADHD. Autism spectrum disorder encompasses a range of neurodevelopmental differences affecting social communication, sensory processing, and behavioral patterns. The concept of a spectrum recognizes the enormous variability in autism presentations, from individuals requiring intensive support to those who may not be diagnosed until adulthood. Social communication challenges in autism can include difficulty with nonverbal communication, problems developing and maintaining relationships, and challenges with social reciprocity. However, these difficulties vary greatly among individuals. Some people with autism are quite social, but struggle with social nuances, while others prefer solitary activities. Sensory processing differences are common in autism, involving over or under-responsivity to various sensory inputs. Some individuals are hypersensitive to sounds, lights, textures, or smells, while others seek intense sensory experiences. These differences can significantly impact daily functioning and comfort in various environments. Repetitive behaviors and restricted interests characterize another key aspect of autism. These might include repetitive movements, insistence on routines, highly focused interests, or unusual responses to sensory aspects of the environment. While sometimes viewed as limitations, these characteristics can also represent strengths, such as exceptional attention to detail or deep expertise in specific areas. The recognition of autism in different populations has evolved significantly. Historically, autism was primarily identified in young children, particularly boys, with obvious developmental delays. However, increasing awareness has led to recognition of autism in girls, adults, and individuals with average or above-average intelligence who may have been missed by earlier diagnostic criteria. Masking represents a phenomenon where individuals with autism learn to suppress or camouflage their natural behaviors to fit social expectations. This can make autism less visible, but often comes at significant psychological cost, including increased anxiety, depression, and exhaustion. Understanding masking is crucial for recognizing autism across diverse presentations. Stress and trauma response. The human stress response system represents a remarkable adaptive mechanism that has ensured our species' survival throughout evolutionary history. However, when this system is overwhelmed or repeatedly activated, it can lead to significant psychological and physical health problems. Understanding how individuals respond to stress and trauma reveals important insights into resilience, vulnerability, and recovery processes. Acute stress reactions represent the immediate response to threatening or overwhelming situations. The body's stress response involves rapid activation of the sympathetic nervous system, releasing hormones like adrenaline and cortisol that prepare the body for action. This fight-or-flight response increases heart rate, blood pressure, and muscle tension, while enhancing alertness and energy availability. The acute stress response typically follows a predictable pattern. Initial shock or disbelief may be followed by intense emotional reactions, physical symptoms, and cognitive disruption. Common responses include anxiety, confusion, difficulty concentrating, sleep disturbances, and changes in appetite. These reactions are normal and usually resolve within days or weeks as individuals process the experience and adapt to changed circumstances. However, individual differences in acute stress responses are substantial. Some people remain remarkably calm under pressure, while others become overwhelmed by relatively minor stressors. These differences reflect various factors, including genetics, past experiences, current life circumstances, available support systems, and learned coping strategies. Peritraumatic dissociation, which involves feeling detached from oneself or one's surroundings during a traumatic event, represents one important variation in acute stress response. While dissociation can be protective during overwhelming experiences, it may also increase the risk of developing longer-term trauma-related problems. Post-traumatic stress disorder develops when the normal stress response system fails to return to baseline following traumatic experiences. PTSD involves four main symptom clusters: re-experiencing the trauma through flashbacks or nightmares, avoidance of trauma-related stimuli, negative changes in thoughts and mood, and alterations in arousal and reactivity. Re-experiencing symptoms can include intrusive memories, nightmares, flashbacks, and intense emotional or physical reactions to trauma reminders. These symptoms occur because traumatic memories are often stored differently in the brain than normal memories, making them more vivid, emotionally charged, and easily triggered by environmental cues. Avoidance symptoms involve efforts to avoid thoughts, feelings, people, places, or activities that remind the individual of the traumatic experience. While avoidance may provide temporary relief, it often maintains trauma symptoms by preventing the natural processing and integration of traumatic memories. Negative alterations in cognitions and mood include persistent negative beliefs about oneself or the world, distorted blame of self or others, persistent negative emotions, diminished interest in activities, feelings of detachment from others, and inability to experience positive emotions. These changes reflect the profound impact trauma can have on one's fundamental assumptions about safety, trust, and meaning. Alterations in arousal and reactivity include hypervigilance, exaggerated startle response, problems with concentration, sleep disturbances, and irritability or aggression. These symptoms reflect a nervous system that remains in a state of high alert, as if danger could strike at any moment. The development of PTSD depends on numerous factors beyond the traumatic event itself. Individual vulnerability factors include previous trauma exposure, family history of mental health problems, lack of social support, and certain personality characteristics. However, it's important to recognize that PTSD can develop in anyone exposed to sufficient trauma, regardless of previous mental health or personal strength. Coping mechanism preferences vary dramatically among individuals and significantly influence how people manage stress and trauma. Problem-focused coping involves directly addressing stressful situations through planning, taking action, and seeking information. This approach is generally effective when situations are controllable and changeable. Emotion-focused coping involves managing emotional reactions to stressful situations rather than changing the situations themselves. This includes strategies like seeking emotional support, reframing situations positively, or using relaxation techniques. Emotion-focused coping is often more helpful when situations are uncontrollable. Avoidance coping involves efforts to avoid or escape from stressful situations or related thoughts and emotions. While sometimes necessary for short-term functioning, excessive avoidance often maintains problems and prevents adaptive processing of difficult experiences. Meaning-making represents another important coping strategy, involving efforts to understand why traumatic events occurred and how they fit into one's life narrative. Successful meaning-making can lead to post-traumatic growth, where individuals develop greater appreciation for life, deeper relationships, increased personal strength, and enhanced spiritual awareness. Social support plays a crucial role in stress and trauma recovery. However, the quality of support is more important than quantity. Helpful support involves empathetic listening, validation of experiences, practical assistance, and encouragement without pressure to get over traumatic experiences quickly. Recovery and resilience factors represent the positive aspects of human adaptation to adversity. Resilience involves the ability to maintain relatively stable functioning despite exposure to significant adversity. Importantly, resilience is not a fixed trait, but rather a dynamic process that can be developed and strengthened over time. Protective factors that enhance resilience include strong social connections, effective problem-solving skills, the ability to manage emotions, a sense of purpose or meaning, optimism and hope, flexibility and adaptability, and self-efficacy or confidence in one's ability to cope with challenges. Biological factors also influence resilience, including genetic variations affecting stress hormone regulation, neurotransmitter functioning, and brain structure. However, environmental factors often have stronger influences on resilience than genetic predispositions. Early life experiences significantly impact later resilience. Secure attachment relationships in childhood provide a foundation for emotional regulation and interpersonal skills that enhance resilience throughout life. Conversely, childhood trauma or neglect can increase vulnerability to later psychological problems, though this is not inevitable. Cultural factors profoundly influence stress and trauma responses. Different cultures have varying beliefs about the causes of psychological distress. Appropriate expressions of emotion, help-seeking behaviors, and recovery processes. Understanding these cultural influences is essential for providing effective support and treatment. Substance use patterns. Substance use represents a complex behavioral phenomenon that exists on a continuum from occasional use to severe addiction. Understanding the factors that influence substance use patterns, vulnerability to addiction, and recovery processes provides crucial insights for prevention, treatment, and support efforts. Addiction vulnerability factors reflect the interaction between genetic predisposition, environmental influences, and individual characteristics. Research suggests that genetic factors account for approximately half of addiction risk, but environmental and psychological factors determine whether genetic vulnerability translates into actual substance use problems. Genetic vulnerabilities involve variations in genes affecting neurotransmitter systems, particularly those involved in reward processing and impulse control. Some individuals inherit genetic variants that make them more sensitive to the rewarding effects of substances or less able to control their use once started. However, having genetic risk factors doesn't guarantee addiction development, just as lacking them doesn't provide complete protection. Neurobiological vulnerabilities include differences in brain development and functioning that affect decision-making, impulse control, and reward sensitivity. The adolescent brain is particularly vulnerable to addiction because reward systems develop before regulatory systems, creating a period of heightened risk-taking and reduced impulse control. Environmental risk factors include early exposure to substances, trauma or chronic stress, family dysfunction, peer influences, and cultural factors that normalize or encourage substance use. Adverse childhood experiences significantly increase addiction risk by affecting brain development and creating psychological vulnerabilities that individuals may attempt to self-medicate with substances. Psychological vulnerabilities include mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, and ADHD, which often co-occur with substance use disorders. Personality factors, such as impulsivity, sensation-seeking, and difficulty tolerating negative emotions, also increase addiction risk. Usage pattern differences reflect the diverse ways individuals engage with substances. Some people can use substances occasionally without developing problems, while others quickly progress to compulsive use. These patterns are influenced by biological factors, substance characteristics, and environmental contexts. Social or recreational use involves occasional substance use in social contexts without significant negative consequences. Users maintain control over their consumption and can easily abstain when necessary. This pattern is characterized by use that enhances rather than replaces other activities and relationships. Regular use involves more frequent consumption, often following predictable patterns or schedules. Users may begin to organize activities around substance use and experience mild withdrawal symptoms when abstaining. This pattern may or may not progress to problematic use, depending on various protective and risk factors. Problematic use involves consumption that causes significant negative consequences in relationships, work, health, or legal domains. Users may recognize these problems, but continue using despite negative consequences. This pattern often involves unsuccessful attempts to reduce or control use. Addiction or substance use disorder represents the most severe pattern, characterized by compulsive use despite serious negative consequences, inability to control consumption, tolerance requiring increasing amounts to achieve desired effects, and withdrawal symptoms when use is discontinued. The progression from initial use to addiction is not inevitable or uniform. Many factors influence whether individuals develop problems with substances, including age of first use, frequency of use, method of consumption, co-occurring mental health conditions, and social environment. Treatment response variations reflect the diverse ways individuals respond to different therapeutic approaches. No single treatment works for everyone, highlighting the importance of personalized treatment planning based on individual needs, preferences, and circumstances. Medication-assisted treatment can be highly effective for certain substance use disorders, particularly opioid and alcohol use disorders. These medications work by reducing cravings, blocking euphoric effects, or creating unpleasant reactions when substances are consumed. However, medication effectiveness varies among individuals based on genetic factors, severity of addiction, and psychological factors. Behavioral therapies represent the foundation of addiction treatment, helping individuals develop skills to manage cravings, avoid triggers, and build satisfying lives without substances. Cognitive behavioral therapy helps identify and change thought patterns and behaviors that contribute to substance use. Motivational interviewing helps resolve ambivalence about change and enhance motivation for recovery. 12-step programs like Alcoholics Anonymous provide peer support and structured approaches to recovery based on spiritual principles and mutual aid. These programs work well for many people, but may not suit everyone's needs or beliefs. Treatment setting preferences vary significantly among individuals. Some people benefit from intensive inpatient treatment that provides 24-hour support and removes them from triggering environments. Others prefer outpatient treatment that allows them to maintain work and family responsibilities while receiving care. The chronic nature of addiction means that treatment often involves multiple episodes of care over time. Relapse rates for substance use disorders are similar to those for other chronic medical conditions like diabetes or hypertension, highlighting the importance of ongoing management rather than expecting permanent cures from single treatment episodes. Relapse prevention strategies focus on helping individuals maintain recovery over time by developing skills to manage high-risk situations, cope with cravings, and handle lapses without returning to full-blown addiction. Effective relapse prevention involves identifying personal triggers, developing alternative coping strategies, building supportive relationships, and creating meaningful life activities that compete with substance use. Cognitive strategies help individuals recognize and challenge thoughts that might lead to substance use. These include identifying cognitive distortions, developing realistic expectations about recovery, and practicing mindfulness techniques that increase awareness of internal experiences without automatically reacting to them. Behavioral strategies involve modifying environments and activities to reduce exposure to triggers while increasing engagement in rewarding substance-free activities. This might include changing social networks, finding new hobbies, or restructuring daily routines to minimize high-risk situations. Social support plays a crucial role in relapse prevention. This includes rebuilding relationships damaged by addiction, developing new friendships with people who support recovery, and participating in support groups or recovery communities that provide ongoing encouragement and accountability. Recovery capital refers to the internal and external resources that support sustained recovery. Internal recovery capital includes motivation, coping skills, mental health, and personal identity changes. External recovery capital includes social support, housing stability, employment, healthcare access, and community connections. The concept of recovery has evolved beyond simple abstinence to encompass broader improvements in quality of life, relationships, and personal functioning. This holistic view recognizes that recovery is a gradual process involving multiple life domains rather than a single event or achievement. Long-term recovery often involves significant personal growth and life changes. Many individuals in recovery report developing greater self-awareness, stronger relationships, clearer life priorities, and enhanced sense of purpose. These positive changes help sustain motivation for continued recovery even during challenging periods. Understanding mental health considerations requires recognizing the complex interplay between biological vulnerabilities, psychological factors, environmental influences, and cultural contexts. Each individual's experience is unique, shaped by their personal history, current circumstances, and available resources. This understanding emphasizes the importance of personalized approaches to recognition, treatment, and support that honor individual differences, while addressing common underlying patterns and mechanisms. The journey toward mental health and recovery is rarely linear or predictable. It involves setbacks and breakthroughs, periods of struggle and growth, and ongoing adaptation to changing life circumstances. Supporting individuals through these processes requires patience, understanding, and recognition that healing and growth take time and occur in different ways for different people. Cultural and environmental influences. The tapestry of human behavior is woven from countless threads of cultural and environmental influences that shape who we become from our earliest moments of life. These forces operate both visibly and invisibly, creating the backdrop against which individual personalities emerge and develop. Understanding these influences reveals how deeply interconnected we are with our social environments and how profoundly our surroundings shape our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Socialization effects. From the moment we enter the world, we begin absorbing messages about who we should be, how we should behave, and what roles we should fulfill in society. These messages come through countless channels, creating a complex web of expectations that influence our development in profound ways. The process of socialization is neither uniform nor neutral. It carries with it the values, beliefs, and biases of the cultures and communities that surround us. Gender role expectations represent one of the most pervasive and influential aspects of socialization. From birth, individuals are often treated differently based on perceived gender, with these differences creating divergent developmental pathways that can persist throughout life. The impact of these expectations extends far beyond surface-level behaviors, influencing fundamental aspects of identity, self-concept, and life choices. Traditional gender role expectations have historically emphasized emotional expressiveness, nurturing behaviors, and interpersonal sensitivity for girls, while encouraging independence, assertiveness, and emotional restraint for boys. These expectations are communicated through countless subtle and overt messages, from the colors chosen for nursery decorations to the types of play activities encouraged, from the language used to describe behavior to the careers presented as appropriate choices. The psychological impact of gender role expectations is profound and multifaceted. When individuals naturally align with traditional expectations, they may experience social approval and support that reinforces their behavior. However, when natural inclinations conflict with gender role expectations, individuals may experience internal conflict, social disapproval, or pressure to suppress authentic aspects of themselves. Research reveals that rigid adherence to traditional gender roles can limit human potential and well-being. Individuals who feel pressured to conform to narrow gender expectations may develop fewer coping strategies, have more limited emotional expression, and experience greater psychological distress when they cannot meet these expectations. The pressure to conform can be particularly intense during adolescence, when peer approval becomes critically important and gender role expectations often intensify. However, gender role expectations are not static or universal. They vary significantly across cultures, historical periods, and social contexts. What is considered appropriately masculine or feminine in one culture may be viewed quite differently in another. These variations highlight the socially constructed nature of gender roles and demonstrate that alternative approaches to gender socialization are both possible and beneficial. The evolution of gender role expectations reflects broader social changes, including shifts in economic structures, family patterns, and cultural values. As societies have become more complex and diverse, traditional gender roles have been challenged and transformed. This evolution has created opportunities for more flexible and individualized approaches to gender expression, while also generating confusion and conflict for those navigating changing expectations. Cultural masculinity concepts represent a particularly complex aspect of gender role socialization. Different cultures emphasize different aspects of masculine identity, creating varying expectations for how masculinity should be expressed and maintained. These concepts profoundly influence individual development, behavior patterns, and life outcomes. Traditional Western concepts of masculinity have often emphasized traits such as physical strength, emotional stoicism, independence, competitiveness, and dominance. These expectations create pressure to avoid showing vulnerability, to suppress certain emotions, and to prove masculinity through various achievements or behaviors. The phrase toxic masculinity has emerged to describe the harmful aspects of these traditional expectations, particularly when they discourage help-seeking, emotional expression, or behaviors that might be perceived as feminine. However, masculinity concepts vary dramatically across cultures. Some cultures emphasize different aspects of masculine identity, such as wisdom, spirituality, family devotion, or artistic expression. These variations demonstrate that there are multiple ways to understand and express masculinity, challenging the notion that any single model is natural or inevitable. The impact of cultural masculinity concepts extends beyond individual psychology to influence social structures, relationships, and community dynamics. When masculinity is defined in narrow or rigid ways, it can limit opportunities for personal growth, restrict emotional expression, and create barriers to intimate relationships. It can also contribute to various social problems, including violence, substance abuse, and mental health issues. Contemporary discussions about masculinity increasingly recognize the need for more flexible and inclusive concepts that allow for diverse expressions of masculine identity. This includes acknowledging that characteristics traditionally labeled as feminine, such as emotional sensitivity, nurturing behavior, and collaborative approaches, can be valuable aspects of masculine identity as well. Family influence patterns represent another crucial aspect of socialization, creating the foundational context within which individual personalities develop. Families serve as the primary socializing agents during early childhood, establishing patterns of interaction, communication, and value transmission that can persist throughout life. Parenting styles significantly influence child development and later adult behavior. Authoritative parenting, which combines warmth and responsiveness with clear expectations and boundaries, generally produces the most positive outcomes in terms of self-esteem, academic achievement, and social competence. However, effective parenting approaches can vary based on cultural context, child temperament, and family circumstances. Family communication patterns create templates for how individuals learn to express emotions, resolve conflicts, and maintain relationships. Families that encourage open communication, emotional expression, and collaborative problem-solving tend to produce individuals with better interpersonal skills and emotional regulation abilities. Conversely, families characterized by criticism, emotional volatility, or communication avoidance may contribute to difficulties in later relationships and emotional management. Birth order effects represent another aspect of family influence, with research suggesting that position within the family constellation can influence personality development and life outcomes. Firstborn children often develop leadership qualities and achievement orientation, while later-born children may become more social and creative. However, these effects are influenced by family size, spacing between children, and cultural factors. Family values and beliefs provide the framework through which children initially understand the world. These include religious or spiritual beliefs, political orientations, attitudes toward education and achievement, and perspectives on relationships and life priorities. While individuals may later modify or reject family values, these early influences often remain significant throughout life. The changing nature of family structures in contemporary society has created new patterns of influence and socialization. Single-parent families, blended families, same-sex parent families, and extended family arrangements each create unique dynamics that influence child development in different ways. These diverse family structures demonstrate that successful socialization can occur in many different contexts. Peer group dynamics become increasingly important as individuals develop, particularly during adolescence, when peer relationships often take precedence over family relationships. Peer groups serve multiple functions, including providing social support, identity exploration opportunities, and contexts for learning social skills. The influence of peer groups is both powerful and multifaceted. Peers can encourage positive behaviors such as academic achievement, pro-social activities, and healthy lifestyle choices. They can also promote negative behaviors such as substance use, risky activities, or antisocial conduct. The direction of peer influence depends on the characteristics and values of specific peer groups. Peer pressure operates through various mechanisms, including direct persuasion, modeling behaviors, and creating social norms that define acceptable conduct. The desire to fit in and gain acceptance can motivate individuals to adopt behaviors, attitudes, or appearances that align with peer group expectations, even when these conflict with other values or preferences. However, peer influence is not simply a matter of passive conformity. Individuals also actively select peer groups that align with their interests, values, and personalities. This selection process means that peer influence often reinforces existing tendencies rather than creating entirely new behavior patterns. The rise of digital communication has transformed peer group dynamics in significant ways. Online communities, social media platforms, and digital gaming environments create new contexts for peer interaction that can transcend geographical boundaries and traditional social categories. These digital peer groups can provide support and connection for individuals who might otherwise feel isolated, but they can also expose individuals to harmful influences or unrealistic social comparisons. Educational and occupational psychology. The realm of education and work represents a major arena where individual differences intersect with environmental demands, creating complex patterns of achievement, satisfaction, and development. Understanding how people learn, perform, and thrive in educational and occupational settings reveals important insights about human potential and the factors that support or hinder success. Learning style preferences reflect the diverse ways individuals process, understand, and retain information. While the concept of learning styles has generated controversy in educational research, there is clear evidence that people have different preferences for how they engage with new material and different strengths in various types of learning activities. Visual learners tend to prefer information presented through images, diagrams, charts, and spatial arrangements. They often benefit from graphic organizers, mind maps, and visual representations of concepts. These individuals may struggle with purely auditory presentations, but excel when information is presented visually or when they can create visual representations of what they're learning. Auditory learners process information most effectively through listening and verbal discussion. They often benefit from lectures, discussions, podcasts, and opportunities to talk through ideas with others. These learners may struggle with written material, but excel in environments that emphasize verbal communication and auditory input. Kinesthetic learners prefer hands-on activities and physical engagement with learning materials. They often benefit from laboratory experiments, field trips, building projects, and other activities that involve movement and manipulation of objects. Traditional classroom settings that emphasize sitting and listening may be particularly challenging for these learners. Reading and writing learners prefer text-based information and learn best through reading and written exercises. They often excel in traditional academic settings that emphasize textbooks, note-taking, and written assignments. These learners may struggle with purely visual or auditory presentations, but thrive when they can read about topics and express their understanding through writing. However, it's important to recognize that most effective learning involves multiple modalities, and individuals often benefit from varied approaches that engage different senses and learning preferences. The key insight is that people have different strengths and preferences that should be considered when designing educational experiences. Academic performance patterns reveal significant individual differences in how people approach and succeed in educational settings. These patterns are influenced by a complex interplay of cognitive abilities, motivation, family background, cultural factors, and educational experiences. Cognitive abilities play a fundamental role in academic performance, but they interact with other factors in complex ways. Traditional measures of intelligence predict academic success to some extent, but they don't capture all the abilities that contribute to educational achievement. Factors such as creativity, practical intelligence, and emotional intelligence also influence academic outcomes. Motivation represents another crucial factor in academic performance. Students who are intrinsically motivated, meaning they find learning inherently interesting and rewarding, tend to achieve better outcomes than those who are primarily extrinsically motivated by external rewards or punishments. However, the sources of motivation vary significantly among individuals and can change over time. Self-regulation skills, including the ability to set goals, monitor progress, and adjust strategies based on feedback, significantly influence academic success. Students who develop strong self-regulation skills tend to achieve better outcomes, regardless of their initial ability levels. These skills can be taught and developed through appropriate educational interventions. Cultural and socioeconomic factors profoundly influence academic performance patterns. Students from families with higher socioeconomic status typically have access to more educational resources, including books, educational activities, and tutoring. They also tend to attend better-funded schools with more experienced teachers and advanced course offerings. Cultural factors influence attitudes toward education, expectations for achievement, and the value placed on different types of learning. Some cultures emphasize collective achievement and cooperation, while others focus on individual competition and excellence. These cultural differences can influence how students approach learning and what they consider important educational outcomes. The role of teachers and educational environments cannot be overstated in shaping academic performance patterns. Effective teachers who create supportive, challenging, and engaging learning environments can significantly improve student outcomes regardless of students' background characteristics. Conversely, negative educational experiences can undermine student motivation and achievement. Career choice influences represent another complex area where individual characteristics interact with environmental factors to shape life outcomes. The careers people choose reflect their interests, abilities, values, and opportunities, but they also influence future development and life satisfaction. Interest patterns play a crucial role in career choice and satisfaction. People tend to be most satisfied and successful in careers that align with their fundamental interests. The Holland Code system identifies 6 broad interest types: realistic interests in working with things and practical problems, investigative interests in scientific and analytical activities, artistic interests in creative and expressive activities, social interests in helping and working with people, enterprising interests in leadership and business activities, and conventional interests in organized and detail-oriented activities. However, interests can be influenced by exposure and opportunity. People may not develop interests in areas they've never experienced, and societal messages about appropriate careers can limit the range of interests individuals feel free to explore. This is particularly relevant for understanding gender and cultural differences in career choices. Ability patterns also influence career choices, with people generally gravitating toward careers that utilize their strengths. However, the relationship between abilities and career success is complex. While certain minimum ability levels may be necessary for specific careers, factors such as motivation, interpersonal skills, and persistence often matter more than exceptional ability. Values significantly influence career satisfaction and longevity. People who choose careers that align with their fundamental values tend to experience greater satisfaction and are more likely to persist in their chosen fields. Important work values include autonomy, security, achievement, altruism, creativity, and work-life balance. Family and cultural influences shape career choices through various mechanisms. Family expectations, socioeconomic status, and cultural values all influence the range of careers considered appropriate or desirable. These influences can be both supportive and limiting, opening some doors while closing others. Economic factors and opportunity structures also significantly influence career choices. The availability of jobs, educational requirements, and economic rewards associated with different careers all influence individual decisions. Changes in the economy and job market can create new opportunities while making others obsolete. Workplace behavior tendencies reflect individual differences in how people function in work environments. These tendencies influence job performance, satisfaction, and career advancement, making them important considerations for both individuals and organizations. Work motivation patterns vary significantly among individuals and influence engagement, productivity, and job satisfaction. Some people are primarily motivated by achievement and advancement opportunities, while others value stability and security. Understanding these motivational differences is crucial for creating work environments that bring out the best in different types of employees. Communication styles significantly influence workplace effectiveness and relationships. Some individuals prefer direct, task-focused communication, while others emphasize relationship building and indirect communication styles. Cultural background often influences communication preferences, creating potential for both synergy and misunderstanding in diverse workplaces. Leadership styles reflect different approaches to influencing and guiding others in work settings. Some individuals prefer authoritative leadership styles that emphasize clear direction and control, while others favor collaborative approaches that emphasize participation and shared decision-making. Effective leadership often requires flexibility in style based on situational demands and follower characteristics. Stress response patterns influence how individuals cope with workplace pressures and challenges. Some people thrive under pressure and seek challenging, high-stress environments, while others perform best in stable, predictable settings. Understanding these differences is important for job placement and stress management. Teamwork preferences vary significantly among individuals, with some people excelling in collaborative environments, while others prefer independent work. These preferences influence job satisfaction and performance, particularly in increasingly team-based work environments. Media and technology impact. The digital revolution has fundamentally transformed human experience, creating new forms of interaction, information processing, and identity formation. The rapid pace of technological change means that we are only beginning to understand the full implications of digital media and technology on human psychology and behavior. Digital media consumption effects represent one of the most significant environmental influences on contemporary human development. The average person now spends multiple hours per day engaging with digital media, from streaming video content to social media platforms to news websites. This unprecedented level of media exposure creates new patterns of information processing, attention allocation, and reality construction. The sheer volume of information available through digital media can be overwhelming, creating challenges for attention regulation and decision-making. The constant stream of news, entertainment, and social content can lead to information overload, making it difficult to focus deeply on any single topic or maintain sustained attention for extended periods. Digital media often presents information in fragmented, bite-sized pieces designed to capture attention quickly. This format can influence how people process information, potentially favoring rapid scanning over deep analysis and immediate gratification over sustained engagement. The long-term implications of these changes for cognitive development and intellectual functioning are still being studied. The interactive nature of digital media creates new opportunities for engagement and participation, but also new pressures and expectations. Users are not just passive consumers, but active participants who create content, share experiences, and engage in ongoing dialogues. This participatory culture can be empowering and enriching, but also demanding and stressful. The personalization algorithms used by many digital platforms create customized media experiences that can reinforce existing preferences and beliefs. While this can enhance user satisfaction and engagement, it can also create echo chambers that limit exposure to diverse perspectives and contribute to polarization on important issues. The global nature of digital media exposes individuals to unprecedented diversity of ideas, cultures, and experiences. This can broaden perspectives and increase cultural understanding, but it can also create confusion about values and identity, particularly for young people who are still developing their sense of self. Gaming and virtual environment preferences reveal another dimension of digital engagement that varies significantly among individuals. Video games and virtual environments offer unique psychological experiences that can fulfill various needs and preferences, from entertainment and challenge to social connection and identity exploration. Different types of games appeal to different psychological needs and preferences. Strategy games may appeal to individuals who enjoy analytical thinking and planning, while action games may attract those who prefer fast-paced, reactive challenges. Role-playing games can provide opportunities for identity exploration and social interaction, while puzzle games may appeal to those who enjoy systematic problem-solving. The immersive nature of gaming environments can provide psychological benefits, including stress relief, skill development, and social connection. Many games offer opportunities to experience mastery, autonomy, and purpose, which are fundamental psychological needs. Gaming communities can provide social support and belonging for individuals who may struggle to find connection in other contexts. However, excessive gaming can also create problems, including social isolation, neglect of other responsibilities, and in some cases, addictive patterns of use. The key factor appears to be balance, and the degree to which gaming enhances rather than replaces other important life activities and relationships. Virtual reality technologies are creating even more immersive digital experiences that may have profound implications for psychology and behavior. These technologies can create presence experiences that feel remarkably real, opening new possibilities for education, therapy, and entertainment, while also raising questions about the boundaries between virtual and real experiences. Social media usage patterns represent perhaps the most psychologically significant aspect of digital technology impact. Social media platforms have fundamentally changed how people maintain relationships, present themselves to others, and understand their place in the world. Social media provides unprecedented opportunities for connection and communication, allowing people to maintain relationships across geographical distances and find communities based on shared interests or experiences. These platforms can be particularly valuable for individuals who might otherwise feel isolated or marginalized. However, social media also creates new pressures and challenges for psychological well-being. The constant presentation of curated, idealized versions of others' lives can lead to social comparison and feelings of inadequacy. The pressure to present oneself in attractive ways can create anxiety and authenticity conflicts. The immediate feedback mechanisms built into social media platforms, such as likes, comments, and shares, can create addictive patterns of use. The intermittent reinforcement provided by this feedback can be particularly compelling, leading to compulsive checking and posting behaviors. Social media can also facilitate cyberbullying, harassment, and other forms of online aggression that can have serious psychological consequences. The anonymity and distance provided by digital platforms can reduce empathy and increase aggressive behavior in some individuals. The role of social media in identity formation is particularly significant for adolescents and young adults who are still developing their sense of self. Social media can provide opportunities for identity exploration and validation, but it can also create pressure to conform to certain images or expectations. Technology and attention changes represent a fundamental shift in how humans process information and maintain focus. The constant availability of digital stimulation has created new challenges for sustained attention and deep cognitive engagement. Multitasking has become a common experience in digital environments, with people frequently switching between different applications, websites, and activities. While this can create a sense of efficiency and productivity, research suggests that multitasking often reduces the quality of attention given to any single task and can increase mental fatigue. The rapid pace of digital communication has created expectations for immediate responses and constant availability. This can increase stress and anxiety while reducing opportunities for reflection and deep thinking. The fear of missing out, known as FOMO, can drive compulsive digital engagement that interferes with other activities and relationships. However, technology also offers tools for enhancing attention and cognitive function. Applications designed for meditation, focus training, and educational purposes can support mental development and well-being. The key is learning to use technology intentionally rather than being passively consumed by it. Digital distractions have become a significant challenge in educational and work environments. The constant availability of entertainment and social stimulation can make it difficult to maintain focus on less immediately rewarding but important tasks. Learning to manage these distractions has become an essential life skill. The impact of technology on sleep patterns represents another significant concern. The blue light emitted by digital screens can interfere with natural sleep rhythms, while the stimulating content can make it difficult to wind down for sleep. The placement of digital devices in bedrooms can create further sleep disruptions. Understanding cultural and environmental influences reveals the profound ways in which context shapes human development and behavior. These influences operate at multiple levels, from intimate family interactions to global digital networks, creating complex webs of influence that shape who we become and how we function in the world. Recognizing these influences is essential for understanding human behavior and creating environments that support healthy development and well-being across diverse populations and circumstances. Research methodologies and controversies. The quest to understand human behavior, cognition, and psychology has led researchers down countless fascinating paths of inquiry. Each method of investigation reveals different aspects of the human experience, while also presenting unique challenges and limitations. The story of psychological research is not just about what we've discovered, but about how we've discovered it, the debates that have shaped our understanding, and the exciting frontiers that lie ahead. Research approaches. The development of sophisticated research methodologies has revolutionized our understanding of the human mind and behavior. Each approach offers a unique window into different aspects of psychological functioning, creating a rich tapestry of knowledge that continues to expand and evolve. Neuroimaging study findings have transformed psychology by allowing researchers to peer directly into the living brain and observe its activity in real time. This technological revolution has bridged the gap between psychology and neuroscience, creating an entirely new field of understanding about how mental processes correspond to brain activity. Functional magnetic resonance imaging, commonly known as fMRI, has become one of the most powerful tools in psychological research. This technique measures blood flow changes in the brain, which correspond to neural activity. When specific brain regions become more active, they require more oxygen, leading to increased blood flow that can be detected and visualized. The results are stunning images that show which parts of the brain light up during different mental activities. The findings from fMRI studies have challenged many long-held assumptions about brain function. For instance, researchers discovered that the brain's default mode network, a collection of brain regions that are active when we're not focused on external tasks, plays a crucial role in self-reflection, memory consolidation, and mental time travel. This discovery has profound implications for understanding conditions like depression, where this network often shows altered activity patterns. Neuroimaging has also revealed the remarkable plasticity of the human brain. Studies of London taxi drivers, who must memorize the complex street layout of the city, showed enlarged hippocampi, the brain region associated with spatial memory. This finding demonstrated that intensive learning can literally reshape the brain structure, providing compelling evidence for neuroplasticity throughout life. However, neuroimaging studies also face significant limitations. The relationship between brain activity and psychological experience is complex and not always straightforward. Just because a brain region is active during a particular task doesn't necessarily mean that region is solely responsible for that function. The brain operates as an interconnected network, making it challenging to assign specific functions to individual regions. Positron emission tomography, or PET scanning, offers another window into brain function by tracking the distribution of radioactive tracers in the brain. This technique has been particularly valuable for studying neurotransmitter systems and metabolic activity. PET studies have revealed important insights about conditions like Alzheimer's disease, showing characteristic patterns of brain metabolism that can aid in early diagnosis. Electroencephalography, known as EEG, measures electrical activity in the brain through electrodes placed on the scalp. While it doesn't provide the detailed spatial resolution of fMRI, EEG offers excellent temporal resolution, capturing brain activity changes within milliseconds. This has been invaluable for studying the timing of cognitive processes and understanding how different brain regions communicate with each other. The integration of multiple neuroimaging techniques has created even more powerful research approaches. Combining EEG with fMRI, for example, allows researchers to study both the timing and location of brain activity with unprecedented precision. These multimodal approaches are revealing new insights about how the brain's complex networks function together to create our mental experiences. Behavioral assessment methods represent the foundation of psychological research, focusing on observable actions and responses rather than internal brain activity. These approaches have a long and rich history in psychology, and they continue to provide crucial insights that complement neuroimaging findings. Experimental psychology relies heavily on controlled laboratory studies, where researchers manipulate specific variables and measure their effects on behavior. These studies allow for strong causal inferences because researchers can control for confounding factors and isolate the effects of particular variables. Classic experiments in psychology, such as those studying memory, attention, and decision-making, have used these methods to establish fundamental principles of human cognition. However, laboratory studies sometimes face challenges related to ecological validity, meaning that the artificial laboratory environment may not accurately reflect how people behave in real-world situations. Researchers have addressed this limitation by developing more naturalistic experimental designs and conducting field studies in real-world settings. Observational studies involve watching and recording behavior without manipulation or intervention. These studies can provide rich insights into natural behavior patterns and are particularly valuable for studying phenomena that cannot be ethically or practically manipulated in laboratory settings. Observational research has been crucial for understanding child development, social interactions, and cultural variations in behavior. Standardized psychological tests and assessments provide systematic ways to measure individual differences in personality, intelligence, aptitude, and psychological functioning. These tools undergo rigorous development and validation processes to ensure they measure what they claim to measure, and do so consistently across different populations and contexts. The development of reliable and valid assessment tools has been essential for both research and clinical applications. Self-report measures, including surveys, questionnaires, and interviews, allow researchers to gather information about people's thoughts, feelings, and experiences that might not be directly observable. While these methods can provide valuable insights into subjective experiences, they also face limitations related to social desirability bias, memory limitations, and the challenges of accurately introspecting about one's own mental processes. Physiological measures complement behavioral assessments by providing objective indicators of internal states. Heart rate, blood pressure, skin conductance, and hormone levels can all provide information about stress, arousal, and emotional states. These measures are particularly valuable because they can detect responses that people might not be aware of or might not accurately report. The integration of behavioral and physiological measures has created powerful research approaches that provide multiple perspectives on psychological phenomena. For example, studies of emotion might combine self-report measures of emotional experience with physiological indicators of arousal and behavioral observations of facial expressions and body language. Longitudinal versus cross-sectional studies represent two fundamental approaches to understanding how psychological phenomena change over time. Each approach has distinct advantages and limitations, and the choice between them significantly influences the types of conclusions that can be drawn from research. Longitudinal studies follow the same individuals over extended periods, sometimes spanning decades. These studies are uniquely valuable for understanding developmental processes, the long-term effects of early experiences, and the stability or change of psychological characteristics over time. The power of longitudinal research lies in its ability to track with in-person changes and to identify causal relationships that unfold over time. Some of the most influential psychological research has come from longitudinal studies. The Grant Study, which has followed Harvard graduates since 1938, has provided unprecedented insights into the factors that contribute to lifelong happiness and well-being. The study has revealed that relationship quality is one of the strongest predictors of life satisfaction, more important than wealth, career success, or other commonly valued achievements. Longitudinal studies of child development have been particularly valuable for understanding how early experiences influence later outcomes. The Dunedin Study, which has followed over 1,000 individuals from birth into middle age, has revealed how childhood temperament, family experiences, and early interventions can have lasting effects on adult mental health, relationships, and life success. However, longitudinal studies face significant challenges. They require enormous resources and long-term commitment from researchers and participants. Participant attrition, where people drop out of the study over time, can bias results if those who leave differ systematically from those who remain. Changes in society, technology, and research methods over the course of long studies can also complicate interpretations of findings. Cross-sectional studies examine different groups of people at a single point in time, often comparing individuals of different ages to understand developmental or generational differences. These studies are much more efficient and cost-effective than longitudinal research, allowing researchers to gather data quickly and test hypotheses without waiting years or decades for results. Cross-sectional research has been instrumental in identifying age-related differences in cognitive abilities, personality traits, and psychological functioning. Studies comparing younger and older adults have revealed both declines and improvements in different cognitive abilities with age, challenging stereotypes about aging and highlighting the complexity of developmental processes. However, cross-sectional studies cannot definitively establish causal relationships or distinguish between age-related changes and cohort effects. Cohort effects occur when observed differences between age groups reflect the unique experiences of different generations rather than developmental changes. For example, differences in technology use between younger and older adults might reflect cohort effects rather than age-related changes in learning ability. The most comprehensive understanding often comes from combining longitudinal and cross-sectional approaches. Sequential studies, which combine both methods, can help disentangle age effects from cohort effects and provide more robust insights into developmental processes. Meta-analysis results represent a powerful approach to synthesizing findings across multiple studies, providing more robust and generalizable conclusions than any single study could offer. This statistical technique has become increasingly important as the volume of psychological research has expanded exponentially. Meta-analysis involves systematically identifying all relevant studies on a particular topic, extracting key findings from each study, and using statistical techniques to combine results across studies. This approach can reveal patterns that might not be apparent in individual studies and can quantify the size and consistency of effects across different research contexts. One of the most influential meta-analyses in psychology examined the effectiveness of psychotherapy across hundreds of studies. The results showed that therapy is generally effective, with the average person receiving therapy being better off than about 80% of those who don't receive treatment. This finding has been crucial for establishing the evidence base for psychological interventions and guiding clinical practice. Meta-analyses have also revealed important insights about controversial topics in psychology. For example, meta-analyses of studies examining gender differences in cognitive abilities have shown that while some differences exist on average, they are generally small, and there is substantial overlap between groups. These findings have helped to contextualize debates about gender and ability, while highlighting the importance of considering individual variation. The power of meta-analysis lies in its ability to identify robust findings that replicate across different studies, populations, and methodologies. However, meta-analyses also face limitations. The quality of a meta-analysis depends on the quality of the individual studies included, and biases in the original research can be perpetuated or even amplified in meta-analytic results. Publication bias represents a particular challenge for meta-analysis. Studies with statistically significant results are more likely to be published than those with null findings, which can lead meta-analyses to overestimate effect sizes. Researchers have developed methods to detect and adjust for publication bias, but it remains an important consideration in interpreting meta-analytic findings, debates, and limitations. The field of psychology has been shaped by numerous debates and controversies that reflect both the complexity of human behavior and the challenges of studying it scientifically. These debates have driven methodological innovations and theoretical developments, while highlighting important limitations in our current understanding. Nature versus nurture considerations represent perhaps the most enduring and fundamental debate in psychology. This debate concerns the relative contributions of genetic inheritance versus environmental factors in shaping human behavior, personality, and abilities. While early discussions often framed this as an either-or question, contemporary understanding recognizes the complex interactions between genetic and environmental influences. Twin studies have been instrumental in advancing our understanding of nature-nurture interactions. By comparing identical twins who share all their genes with fraternal twins who share about half their genes, researchers can estimate the relative contributions of genetic and environmental factors to various traits. These studies have revealed that virtually all psychological characteristics are influenced by both genetic and environmental factors, though the relative contributions vary significantly across different traits. Intelligence, as measured by IQ tests, shows substantial heritability, with genetic factors accounting for roughly 50 to 80% of individual differences in adult intelligence. However, this doesn't mean that intelligence is fixed or unchangeable. Environmental factors, including education, nutrition, and intellectual stimulation, can significantly influence intellectual development, particularly during childhood. Personality traits also show significant heritability, but environmental factors play important roles in shaping how these traits are expressed and developed over time. The same genetic predisposition might lead to different outcomes depending on environmental circumstances, family influences, and life experiences. The nature-nurture debate has important implications for understanding psychological disorders. Many mental health conditions show both genetic vulnerabilities and environmental triggers. For example, depression appears to result from the interaction between genetic predispositions and stressful life events. Understanding these interactions is crucial for developing effective prevention and treatment strategies. Epigenetics has added another layer of complexity to nature-nurture discussions. This field studies how environmental factors can influence gene expression without changing the underlying DNA sequence. Experiences like trauma, stress, or nutrition can lead to epigenetic changes that affect how genes are expressed, potentially influencing behavior and even being passed on to future generations. The recognition that genes and environment interact in complex ways has shifted the focus from asking whether nature or nurture is more important to understanding how they work together to influence human development. This system's perspective recognizes that genetic influences can't be understood in isolation from environmental contexts, and environmental effects often depend on genetic predispositions. Statistical significance versus practical significance represents another important debate that affects how research findings are interpreted and applied. Statistical significance indicates whether observed differences or relationships are likely to have occurred by chance, while practical significance concerns whether these differences are large enough to matter in real-world contexts. The emphasis on statistical significance in psychological research has sometimes led to overinterpretation of small effects that, while statistically reliable, may not have meaningful implications for understanding or improving human welfare. A study might find a statistically significant difference between groups that is so small as to be practically meaningless. Effect size measures, which quantify the magnitude of differences or relationships, provide important information about practical significance. A large effect size indicates that the finding is not only statistically reliable, but also substantial enough to have real-world implications. Small effect sizes, while potentially interesting from a theoretical perspective, may have limited practical applications. The replication crisis in psychology has highlighted the importance of distinguishing between statistical and practical significance. Many findings that achieved statistical significance in original studies have failed to replicate in subsequent research, suggesting that some effects may have been overestimated or may not be as robust as initially believed. Confidence intervals provide another way to evaluate both statistical and practical significance by showing the range of plausible values for an effect. Wide confidence intervals suggest uncertainty about the true size of an effect, while narrow intervals indicate more precise estimates. Effects with confidence intervals that include practically meaningless values should be interpreted cautiously. The debate about significance has led to calls for reform in how psychological research is conducted and reported. Some researchers advocate for larger sample sizes, pre-registration of study hypotheses, and greater emphasis on replication. Others suggest moving beyond traditional significance testing to focus more on effect sizes, confidence intervals, and Bayesian approaches to statistical inference. Cultural bias in research represents a critical limitation that affects the generalizability and validity of psychological findings. Much psychological research has been conducted on participants from Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic societies, often referred to by the acronym WEIRD. This narrow focus raises questions about whether findings can be generalized to the broader human population. Cultural differences in psychological phenomena can be substantial. For example, concepts of self and identity vary significantly across cultures, with some emphasizing individual achievement and independence, while others prioritize group harmony and interdependence. These differences can affect everything from cognitive processes to emotional expression to social behavior. Research on cognitive biases provides a compelling example of cultural variation. Many cognitive biases that were initially thought to be universal human tendencies have been shown to vary across cultures. The fundamental attribution error, which involves attributing others' behavior to their personality rather than situational factors, is much stronger in individualistic Western cultures than in collectivistic Eastern cultures. Language differences can also affect psychological research. Many psychological concepts and measures were developed in English and may not translate directly to other languages or cultural contexts. Even when measures are carefully translated, the underlying concepts may not have equivalent meanings across cultures. Sampling bias represents another aspect of cultural bias in research. Even within diverse societies, research participants are often recruited from university populations or other convenience samples that may not represent the broader population. This can limit the generalizability of findings and may particularly affect our understanding of how psychological phenomena vary across socioeconomic, educational, and cultural groups. The underrepresentation of certain populations in psychological research has led to calls for greater diversity in research samples and research teams. Including researchers from different cultural backgrounds can help identify cultural assumptions and biases that might otherwise go unrecognized. Cross-cultural research methods have been developed to address some of these limitations. These approaches involve conducting similar studies across multiple cultures to identify universal versus culture-specific patterns. However, cross-cultural research faces its own challenges, including ensuring that measures are culturally appropriate and that cultural differences are not confounded with other factors like economic development or education levels. Individual variation importance represents a fundamental challenge in psychological research that affects how findings are interpreted and applied. Psychology often focuses on average differences between groups or conditions, but individuals within groups can vary enormously. This variation means that group-level findings may not apply to specific individuals. The emphasis on group averages can obscure important individual differences that might be crucial for understanding and predicting behavior. Two groups might have identical averages, but completely different patterns of individual variation. In some cases, the overlap between groups might be so substantial that group membership provides little information about individual characteristics. Personality research illustrates this challenge well. While research has identified consistent patterns in how personality traits relate to various outcomes, individuals with similar personality profiles can have very different life experiences and achievements. The same personality trait might be advantageous in some contexts, but problematic in others. Individual differences also affect how people respond to interventions and treatments. A therapy approach that works well for most people might be ineffective or even harmful for some individuals. Understanding individual variation is crucial for developing personalized approaches to treatment and intervention. The study of individual differences requires different research approaches than those focused on average effects. Idiographic approaches, which focus on understanding individuals in depth, complement nomothetic approaches that seek general laws and principles. Person-centered analysis methods allow researchers to identify distinct subgroups within populations that might respond differently to interventions or show different developmental patterns. Precision medicine represents an emerging approach that explicitly acknowledges individual variation and seeks to tailor treatments to individual characteristics. This approach uses genetic, biological, and psychological information to predict who is most likely to benefit from specific treatments. Future directions. The future of psychological research promises exciting developments that will expand our understanding of human behavior and improve our ability to promote mental health and well-being. Emerging technologies, interdisciplinary collaborations, and innovative methodologies are opening new frontiers for exploration. Emerging research areas reflect the evolving landscape of human experience and the development of new research tools and perspectives. These areas represent some of the most promising directions for advancing psychological science in the coming decades. Digital psychology represents a rapidly expanding field that studies how technology affects human behavior and mental processes. As digital technologies become increasingly integrated into daily life, understanding their psychological effects becomes crucial. Research in this area examines topics such as social media's impact on well-being, the effects of digital multitasking on attention and learning, and the potential for digital interventions to improve mental health. The rise of smartphones and wearable devices has created unprecedented opportunities for studying behavior in natural settings. These devices can collect continuous data on location, activity, sleep patterns, social interactions, and even physiological measures. This ecological momentary assessment allows researchers to study how psychological states and behaviors fluctuate throughout daily life and in response to environmental changes. Virtual and augmented reality technologies are creating new possibilities for both research and intervention. These immersive technologies can create controlled environments for studying behavior while maintaining ecological validity. They also offer new therapeutic possibilities, such as exposure therapy for phobias or training environments for developing social skills. Positive psychology continues to expand beyond its initial focus on happiness and well-being to examine broader questions about human flourishing and resilience. This field investigates factors that contribute to optimal human functioning, including strengths, virtues, and positive emotions. Research in positive psychology has important implications for education, workplace productivity, and mental health treatment. Environmental psychology is gaining increased attention as climate change and environmental challenges become more pressing global concerns. This field studies the relationships between people and their physical environments, including how environmental factors affect well-being and behavior, and how psychological factors influence environmental attitudes and behaviors. Technological advances in study methods are revolutionizing how psychological research is conducted, creating possibilities that were unimaginable just a few years ago. These advances are improving the precision, scope, and accessibility of psychological research. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are transforming data analysis in psychological research. These tools can identify patterns in large, complex datasets that would be impossible for humans to detect. Machine learning algorithms can analyze text, speech, and behavioral patterns to identify psychological states and predict outcomes with unprecedented accuracy. Natural language processing allows researchers to analyze large volumes of text data, such as social media posts, therapy transcripts, or diary entries, to understand psychological phenomena. These techniques can identify emotional states, personality characteristics, and mental health indicators from written communication, opening new avenues for research and assessment. Brain-computer interfaces represent an emerging technology that could revolutionize our understanding of the relationship between brain activity and psychological experience. These devices can detect brain signals and translate them into computer commands, potentially allowing for direct measurement of mental states and intentions. Advanced neuroimaging techniques continue to improve in resolution and accessibility. New methods allow for more precise measurement of brain activity and structure, while portable devices are making neuroimaging more accessible for research outside traditional laboratory settings. Big data approaches allow researchers to analyze enormous datasets that capture behavior patterns across large populations. These datasets can reveal insights that would be impossible to obtain through traditional small-scale studies, though they also raise important questions about privacy and consent. Interdisciplinary approaches are becoming increasingly important as psychology intersects with fields such as genetics, computer science, economics, and public health. These collaborations are generating new insights and methodologies that advance understanding beyond what any single discipline could achieve. The integration of psychology with genetics has created the field of behavioral genetics, which studies how genetic factors influence behavior and psychological traits. Advances in genetic sequencing technology are making it possible to identify specific genetic variants associated with psychological characteristics, and to understand how genes interact with environmental factors. Neuroeconomics combines psychology, neuroscience, and economics to understand decision-making processes. This field uses brain imaging and other neuroscience methods to study how people make economic decisions, revealing insights about rationality, risk-taking, and social preferences that have implications for both theory and policy. Computational psychology uses mathematical models and computer simulations to understand psychological processes. These approaches can test theoretical predictions, generate new hypotheses, and help integrate findings across different levels of analysis from neurons to behavior. Social network analysis, borrowed from sociology and computer science, allows psychologists to study how social relationships and network structures influence behavior and well-being. This approach has revealed important insights about how social influence spreads through networks and how network position affects individual outcomes. Public health collaborations are helping to translate psychological research into population-level interventions. These partnerships focus on understanding how psychological factors contribute to public health challenges and developing interventions that can be implemented at scale. Clinical application developments represent one of the most important goals of psychological research, translating scientific findings into effective treatments and interventions that improve people's lives. The future promises exciting developments in how psychological knowledge is applied in clinical settings. Personalized treatment approaches are being developed that tailor interventions to individual characteristics and needs. These approaches use information about genetics, brain function, personality, and other individual differences to predict who will respond best to specific treatments. This precision medicine approach could significantly improve treatment outcomes and reduce the trial and error process, often involved in finding effective treatments. Digital therapeutics represent a new category of interventions that use technology to deliver evidence-based treatments. These can include smartphone apps for mood monitoring and cognitive behavioral therapy, virtual reality systems for exposure therapy, or online platforms for delivering psychotherapy. Digital therapeutics have the potential to make effective treatments more accessible and affordable. Prevention programs based on psychological research are being developed and implemented across various settings. These programs aim to prevent mental health problems before they develop by addressing risk factors and building protective factors. School-based programs that teach emotional regulation skills and workplace interventions that reduce stress are examples of prevention applications. Measurement-based care involves using standardized assessments and regular monitoring to guide treatment decisions. This approach ensures that treatments are working and allows for adjustments when they're not. Technology is making it easier to implement measurement-based care through automated assessment tools and feedback systems. The integration of psychological principles into healthcare more broadly is an important development. Understanding how psychological factors affect physical health and medical outcomes is leading to more comprehensive approaches to healthcare that address both mental and physical well-being. Training and education in psychology are also evolving to incorporate new research findings and technological advances. Virtual reality is being used to train therapists. Machine learning is being taught as a research tool, and interdisciplinary training programs are preparing the next generation of researchers to work across traditional boundaries. The future of psychological research holds tremendous promise for advancing our understanding of human behavior and improving human well-being. However, realizing this potential will require continued attention to methodological rigor, cultural sensitivity, and the translation of research findings into practical applications. The challenges are significant, but so are the opportunities to make meaningful contributions to human knowledge and welfare. As we look toward the future, it's clear that psychological research will continue to evolve and adapt to new technologies, social changes, and scientific developments. The methods we use, the questions we ask, and the ways we apply our findings will undoubtedly change. But the fundamental goal of understanding human behavior and promoting well-being will remain constant. The journey of psychological research is far from over, and the most exciting discoveries may still lie ahead.